Dear viewers, the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, that is Gladys Boss, currently presiding over the business of the National Assembly this afternoon, has directed that the quorum bell be rung, and this directive is pursuant to Standing Orders of the National Assembly, Standing Orders number 34, that guide the House on matters quorum at the commencement of business. Just taking you through some of the highlights in the Assumption of Office of President and Transition of Executive Bill 2025. And maybe finally, on the last thing we may highlight on this bill is that Clause 25 and 26 provides for the arrangements for the transition of the executive authority after the assumption of the office of the President-elect. The bill expressly provides for the continuation in office of cabinet secretaries and other designated state officers that will serve in the cabinet pending the appointment of the incoming office holders. Clause 26 expressly provides that accounting officers in the executive shall continue acting in such capacity until the designation of another accounting officer by the cabinet secretary responsible for the matter relating to finance have been appointed. The Act further has restrictions of certain actions by state and public officers and the express prohibition of the acts and omissions designed to obstruct the smooth transition of the executive authority and the formation of the government in accordance to the laws of Kenya. Clause number 24 provides for the requirement of the handover reports and then listing of what the handover reports shall contain. Basically, this is a bill with 32 clauses that members of parliament will be considering in the second and the third stages of the bill. The Equalization Fund Administration Bill, Senate Bills number 14 of the year 2023, is a bill that the House is set to resume debate on this afternoon. The debate was interrupted yesterday in the afternoon sitting, and this bill on matters Equalization Fund is by the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Matters Finance and National Planning. And during the debate yesterday, we had members of Parliament calling for streamlining of matters to do with the management of the Equalization Fund and equally extension of the expiration period. Our dear viewers, the Equalization Fund tenure is set to lapse in 2030, and members of Parliament in the bill were backing the proposals to extend the tenure of the fund, arguing that the bill or the act for that matter is yet to achieve its purpose as enshrined in the 2010 Constitution. The Insurance Professionals Bill, National Assembly Bills number 13 of the year 2024 by the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Matters Finance and National Planning, is a bill at the second stage. We expect debate on this bill, and equally lined up for debate this afternoon is the Culture Bill, National Assembly Bills number 12 of the year 2024 by the leader of the majority party, the Political Parties Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 35 of the year 2022, where we
now have quorum. We may proceed. First order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
You may proceed with the papers.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, February 20th, 2025. reports of the Auditor General and financial statement for the years ended 30th June 2021, 30th June 2022, and 30th June 2023, and the certificates therein in respect of A. Wanje Secondary School, B. Kimani Kiunjuri High School, C. Kipsianan Secondary School, D. Naivasha Girls Secondary School, E. Mwani Boys Secondary School, F. Sankuri Secondary School, G. Garissa High School, H. Munyaka Secondary School, I. Molo Highway Secondary School, J. St. Bakita Taragwa Girls High School, K. St. Patrick's High School, L. Metkei Girls Public Secondary School, MAIC Girls Secondary School, Loitoktok, N. Nun Kopir Girls Secondary School, O. St. Maria Veronica Girls Secondary School, P. Arimi Mixed Day School, Day Secondary School, Q. Kerobon Boys Secondary School, R. Colson Secondary School, S. Bishop Ketimu Gandu Girls High School, T. Our Lady Consolata Moigori High School, U. Bishop Sulemeti Chelemuk Girls High School, V. Namgoi Mixed Day Secondary School, W. Mpeketoni Boys High School, X. Mwani Girls High School, Y. Kisau Girls Secondary School, Z. Olotoktok Boys High School, A. St. Josephine Bakita Masinga Girls High School, BB Nduluku Secondary School, CC AIC Tulomboi Secondary School, DD Chumani Secondary School, EE Lamu Boys Secondary School, FF St. Bonaventure Kaherti Boys High School, GG Kimani Girls High School, HH St. Malivani Secondary School, II Dr. Kraft Memorial Secondary School, JJ St. Bakita Bahati Girls Secondary School, KK St. Anne Gudunguri Girls Secondary School, IILL Kimuri Secondary School, and MM Mayela Township Secondary School. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I lay.
Honorable members, I would like to have your indulgence to reorder the order paper. So we'll now move to motion number 8 and 9. Then we will come back to 7, questions and statements, and then back to 6. Then after that, we can resume our order paper as usual. So let's... Have we finished laying of papers? Mm-hmm. But they're not urgent. We will come back to you. We'll come back to you. Allow us to do the procedural motions, the 2, 8, and 9. Then we go to the statement of the Leader of Majority, and then we come back to you. Yes, there's a reason. Okay? Read the order out.
Order number 8, procedural motion, extension of period for consideration of the 2025 budget policy statement.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following procedural motion, that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order number 232.7 relating to timelines for consideration of budget policy statement, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the 2025 budget policy statement by a period of 14 days from 27th February 2025. Honorable Speaker, the budget making process is one of the key critical roles of this House, and it really requires the complete active participation of all members, Honorable Speaker. And this procedural motion, therefore, Honorable Speaker, seeks to extend statutory timelines for consideration of the budget policy statement by at least 14 days, or in particular 14 days, Honorable Speaker. And this extension is necessitated by by the fact that the Committee on Selection is yet to finalize the nomination of members to various committees, and it's actually the committee that is mandated to do that work, and its timeline has lapsed, Honorable Speaker. And it is for that reason that this very motion is being moved, so that this committee is constituted. As you're all aware, that the timeline lapsed of those select committees and the budget appropriation
It's
and appropriation committee.
self-explanatory. Thank you.
Exactly.
You may call your seconder.
So I therefore move this, Honorable Speaker, and I beg the Honorable Kangogo to second. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. What is this?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I wish to second, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, I now propose the question that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 2327 relating to the timelines for consideration of the budget policy statement, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the 2025 budget policy statement by a period of 14 days from 27th February 2025. Thank you, honorable members. I now put the question that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 2327 relating to the timelines for considerations of the budget policy statement, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the 2025 budget policy statement by a period of 14 days from 27th February 2025. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Order number 9, procedural motion, extension of period for consideration of the 2025 debt management strategy.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the following procedural motion, that notwithstanding the provision of Standing Order number 232-4 relating to timelines for consideration of debt management strategy, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the 2025 debt management strategy by a period of 10 days from 24th February 2025. The facts, Honorable Speaker, are similar to what we said in the previous procedural motion, considering that the 2025 medium-term debt management strategy, which is expected to table its report to the House for consideration within 10 days. So it's very important that we extend this particular timeline, similar to what we said in the previous procedural motion that sought to extend the budget and appropriation, the budget policy statement by a period of 14 days. So I beg to move on this, and I urge the Honorable Adams to second.
Madam Speaker, I second.
What are you saying? Honorable members, I now propose the question that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 232A-4 relating to timelines for consideration of the debt management strategy, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the 2025 debt management strategy by a period of 10 days from the 24th of February 2025. Thank you, honorable members. I now put the question that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 232A-4 relating to the timelines for consideration of the debt management strategy, this House resolves to extend the period for consideration of the 2025 debt management strategy by a period of 10 days from 24th February 2025. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. And then next we shall go back to order number 7. Order number 5, sorry, for papers, because majority leader has.
Order number 5, papers.
Okay, Chairperson, Administration.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, 20th February 2025. Report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security on 1. Its consideration of the Birth and Death Registration Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 37 of 2024. 2. Participation in the ID4 Africa Annual General Meeting, AGM, held in Cape Town, South Africa, from the 21st to 24th May 2024. I lay.
The next paper, Chairperson, Transport. Honorable GK.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 20th February 2025. Report of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure and on its consideration of public petition number 14 of 2024 regarding legal recognition and protection of e-hearing, motorcycle riders, and delivery personnel. Thank you.
Okay. Now we can go back to order number 6. Honorable members, we can go back to order number 6.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Atandi, is it? Oh, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Hold on a minute, the chairperson has to give Chairperson, you may give notice. The chairperson, Transport.
Okay.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House adopt the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure on its consideration of public petition number 14 of 2024 regarding legal recognition and protection of e-hearing, motorcycle riders, and delivery personnel laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 20th February 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Member for Alego Usonga, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that aware that the Fertilizer and Animal Foods Act 2015 provides for regulation of fertilizer importation in the country. Further aware that the Fertilizer and Animal Foods Staffs Board regulates the fertilizer and animal foodstuffs industry, including the manufacture and production of fertilizers. Noting that the country currently relies heavily on imported fertilizer due to inadequate local production capacity. Further noting that the low local production leads to high costs for farmers, reducing their profits and results in unhealthy reliance on imported fertilizer. Concerned that this scenario threatens the country's food security in case of supply disruptions and discourages local production, recognizing that local fertilizer production could lead to improved fertilizer quality, increased crop yields, and a reduction in the environmental harm caused by the use of substandard fertilizers, recalling that the country has the potential to produce fertilizer that could meet the country's domestic demand and also supply the regional markets, further recognizing that there is need for the government to work with local producers to develop high-quality fertilizer tailored to the needs of Kenyan farmers and crops. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the national government, through the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, supports and promotes local fertilizer manufacturing industries by investing in research and development to bolster the domestic fertilizer manufacturing sector. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, next order. That would be order number 7.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Majority Leader, you have your weekly statement on behalf of the Majority Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, this is, I'll be holding brief for the Majority Leader for today. And pursuant to the provisions of the Standing Order number 44-2A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Tuesday, 18th February 2025, to prioritize business for consideration during the week. Honorable Speaker, with regard to business scheduled for Tuesday next week, the House is expected to consider the following government and individual members' bill at second reading, some of which are already listed in today's order paper. One is the Equalization Fund Bill, Senate Bill number 14 of 2023. 2 is the Political Parties Bill 2022, the Insurance Professionals Bill 2024, the Culture Bill 2024, the Public Finance Management Bill of number 2 Bill 2024, the Institute of Social Work Professionals Bill 2023, the Gold Processing Bill 2023 that was here in this very floor yesterday, Honorable Speaker, the National Police Service Commission Amendment Bill 2024, the Basic Education Bill Amendment Bill number 2023, and the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 37 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, the Committee on Selection will also conclude its consideration of the list of members proposed to be appointed to the 18 elapsed committees, including any consequential changes to other committees. This is it has been a topic in people's lips, and it's important for us to inform you that this will be concluded next week on Tuesday. In this regard, the House will consider the motion on the constitution of other lapsed committees, in addition to the motion to ratification of the agreements for the establishment of the African Finance Corporation. Mr. Speaker, as members will recall, you issued a communication guiding the House that the Liaison Committee would consider the supplementary estimates for the year 2024 and 2025 budget policy statement and debt management strategy. This is because the Select Committee on the budget, the Select Committee on Budget had its time lapse sometimes in this session, Honorable Speaker, and that is why that communication was issued. And this was occasioned by the delayed constitution of the Budget and Appropriation Committee and the Public Debt and Privatization Committee. As members have noticed in the supplementary order paper for today, Honorable Speaker, I intend to move a motion for extension of the period for the consideration. This has already been done, and when you reordered the order paper. And as a leadership, we had the Liaison Committee working with the departmental committees to fast-track the consideration of the two committees or two budget documents and the supplementary estimates too, so as to enable the House to conclude with them soonest. Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee also noted the status on the uptake of post-service medical by members, and as at last week, and commended and as last week, the enrolled members, there are several members that have enrolled willingly, and of course, they've also displayed their willingness to register to the scheme. And on behalf of the committee, we encourage members who have not enrolled to register soonest in order to allow the clerk to proceed with the administrative processes of actualizing the scheme without leaving any member behind. This must be re-emphasized, that the tables that you see on the corridors on your way to Parliament or to the chambers are for the members or the staff that are taking the registration of the post-service medical scheme by members, and members are encouraged. If you haven't, and you're in this floor or in this chamber, you are encouraged to register as soon as possible so that that is expedited upon. And finally, Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee will reconvene again on 25th of February 2025 to schedule business for the rest of that week. I now wish to lay the statement on the table of the House. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Osoro. And before we proceed with the other statements, allow me to take this opportunity to welcome the following schools that are seated in the public gallery. Compuera Academy from Dagoretti South Constituency, Nairobi County. And Harambee School, Makadara, Harambee School from Makadara Constituency, Nairobi County. I also wish to welcome another set of schools seated in the Speaker's Gallery. That's St. Clair Girls School from Gatundu South Constituency, Kiambu County. And I now call upon the Honorable KJ Kiare to welcome the schools on our behalf and also use the opportunity to make the announcements relating to the Scouts Founders Day. Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, I truly thank you. And I take this opportunity to thank the learners who have visited Parliament today and to welcome them to Parliament. And allow me, Madam Speaker, to single out Riara School. Riara School is an exceptional school within the Dagoretti area, a school founded by great educators in this country, Mr. and Mrs. Gashukia and the Gashukia family. And for more than 4 decades, this school has been an exceptional school in terms of quality of academic and even extracurricular. And so I want to welcome the learners to Bunge today. And this is where the laws of the land are made. And all the laws that we make in this Bunge, we make them with the consideration of what you see in that banner there that says all the things we do here, we do them for the welfare of society and the just government of the people. Madam Speaker, I will also take this opportunity to let the members know that this coming weekend is a most important weekend for the scouting community. And I say this, leading a caucus in this parliament known as the World Scout Parliamentary Union, a very vibrant and active caucus of whose membership are also very active members like the member for Waraka, the Honorable TJ, a very committed member and a scout. And this caucus brings together parliamentarians who are interested in scouting and are supporting scouting in the Republic. Madam Speaker, as you would know, Kenya holds a very special place in scouting in the world. The founder of scouting, one Lord Baden-Powell, and his wife, Lady Powell, decided that their final resting place shall be in Kenya. And so the remains of the founders of the World Scouting Movement are here in Kenya. And so I take this opportunity to welcome all members of Parliament to Nyeri, the scouting capital of the world, for the most important activity in scouting calendar, which is the World Scouting Founders Day that shall be taking place in Nyeri this weekend. Finally, Madam Speaker, scouting as a movement is no longer what it used to be when we were young. We used to see how vibrant scouting used to be. We have, as a house, to ask ourselves, if the scouting is getting monies out of our budget, if scouting is getting money out of the exchequer, is this parliament on top of the issues that are happening in the scouting movement? Are we supporting the Kenya Scouting Association as we should? Are we taking them to task in how we should in developing scouting in this country? Madam Speaker, these shall be issues that shall be discussed this weekend as we seek to bring back the former lost glory into scouting and calling upon this House to take its rightful place in the oversight of the scouting activities in this country. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity and welcome everybody to Founders Day of the scouting movement at Nyeri, the capital city of scouting in the entire world. Welcome learners, and if you have not joined the scouting movement, make sure you join scouting in your school, and you shall be supported by this parliament through the World Scout Parliamentary Union. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
KJ, thank you very much. Honorable members, we are going to reorganize the order paper this way. We'll go to order number 10. Then we'll go to 15, and then we will go to 13. We will get there, honorable members. We'll get there. Next order.
Order number 10, the Assumption of the Office of President and Transition of Executive Authority Bill, National Assembly Bill number 1 of 2025, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to provide for the procedure and ceremony for the assumption of the office of president by the president-elect in accordance with Article 141 of the Constitution, the orderly transition of executive authority before and after a presidential election, and for connected purposes. Order number 15, the Public Finance Management Amendment number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2024, second reading.
Majority Leader, Leader of the Majority Party, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Public Finance Management Bill 2024 be read the second time. Honorable Speaker, this bill was read for the first time on 19th June of 2024 and was then committed to the Committee for Consideration and tabling of report. I'd like to thank the committee for a job well done. Honorable Speaker, this bill seeks to amend the Public Finance Management Act, CAP 412, to align the timelines for the passing and consideration of the finance bill by the county assemblies and the National Assembly. And to be more specific, Honorable Speaker, Clause 2 of the bill seeks to amend Section 1292A of the Act to provide for clarity on and harmonization of timelines for passing of the finance bill between county assemblies and National Assembly. Just harmonizing. And it seeks to delete the words, except the finance bill in Section 1292A of the Act and Section 1292A of the Act, then provide as follows, Honorable Speaker, that following approval by the County Executive Committee, the County Executive Committee member for Finance shall submit to the County Assembly the budget estimates, supporting documents, and any other bill, Honorable Speaker, that requires to implement the budget, except the finance bill by 30th April in that year. Honorable Speaker, the key word in this particular amendment will be except the finance bill. That is what this particular bill seeks to include in that particular clause. Additionally, Honorable Speaker, Clause 3 of the bill seeks to introduce a new Section 131A to provide for similar procedures for submissions and considering the passing of the finance bill in the County Assembly as that of the National Assembly. So therefore, Honorable Speaker, that new Section 131A will then provide as follows, because it's actually a new one. Submission, consideration, and passing of the County Finance Bill. Number 131A, 1. County Executive Committee member for Finance shall submit to the County Assembly on or before 30th April the County Finance Bill setting out the revenue measures of the county government. There are clear timelines here, Honorable Speaker, that did not exist in the previous one. And following, and then it will provide under 2, that following submission of the County Finance Bill by County Executive Committee member for Finance, the relevant committee of the County Assembly shall introduce the bill in the County Assembly. 3 will provide that the County Assembly shall consider and pass the County Finance Bill with or without amendments in time for it to be presented for assent by 30th June each year. This hasn't been there, Honorable Speaker, and that really seeks to help, harmonize such things, Honorable Speaker. And 4 will provide for any recommendations made by the relevant committee of the County Assembly or resolution passed by the County Assembly on revenue matters shall ensure that the total amount of revenue raised is consistent with the approved fiscal framework. The word here is consistent with the approved fiscal framework. B, take into account the principles of equity, certainty, and ease of collection. C, consider the impact of the proposed changes on the composition of the tax revenue with reference to direct and indirect taxes. And then D, consider domestic, regional, and international tax trends. E, consider the impact on development and investment, employment, and economic growth. And F, Honorable Speaker, it will take into account the taxation and other tariff arrangements and obligations that Kenya has ratified, including the taxation and the tariff arrangements under the East African Community Treaty. And 5, Honorable Speaker, the recommendation of the County Executive Committee member for Finance shall be included in report and tabled in the County Assembly. Because there has been disparities, Honorable Speaker. There hasn't been really a harmonized system between the County Executive Committee members and the County Assembly, because there was utmost autonomy by the County Executive Committees, which is detrimental now to the works of the County Assembly as an assembly. Honorable Speaker, Clause 4 of the bill seeks to appeal Section 133 to align the practice in the County Assembly to that of the National Assembly in consideration of the finance bill. This must be clear. You know, the only finance bill that Kenyans know or Kenyans are aware of is the finance bill by the National Assembly. Kenyans are unaware that every county assembly also has their own finance bill. So we want to realign that. This particular bill seeks to realign such so that we have a replica of what happens in the National Assembly as far as the finance bill is concerned, and should replicate to what happens in the county assemblies, Honorable Speaker. And that is what Section 133 seeks to amend. And it provides that not later than 90 days after passing the appropriation bill, the county assembly shall consider and approve the finance bill with or without amendments. Mr. Speaker, this is very important because the casual way to which the county assemblies and the county governments run their business affairs, especially the business of the finance bills, Mr. Speaker, will be put to a stop. It now is well aligned within the law. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, this bill contributes largely to the development of this country in terms of the finance sector. It contributes largely towards, of course, realigning the funds that come through such provisions that are introduced in the finance bill. And I therefore urge the honorable members to support this bill as it is. And I therefore beg to move, Honorable Speaker, and ask the Honorable Jared Okello to second.
Thank you. The Honorable Jared Okello.
Madam Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity to second this bill that has been proposed by the majority whip, my brother Honorable Osoro. Madam Speaker, it is true that there has been a disconnect between the budget process at the counties together with the budget processes within the National Assembly, Honorable Speaker. And this bill seeks to create a level of uniformity in our budgeting processes, Honorable Speaker. Certain times budgets are passed here, monies are appropriated, even those that are going to the counties, yet the counties are not ready with their own budgets, Honorable Speaker. So they push Treasury to give them monies without necessarily having what that money is going to do in their various counties, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, this is a very important bill that will seek to cure that kind of disconnect, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, again, counties do not come up with full disclosure. We know that there are certain times that the monies that they get as personal revenue or revenue mopped up by themselves in the counties are never reflected into the final budgets that they come up with. And therefore, we wonder that these counties make so much money, monies that we do not know about, monies that are able to run their affairs in the various counties, but yet they push the national government out of that fund that the shareable revenue. That is exactly what they're waiting for. So we ask ourselves, Honorable Speaker, that in order not to devolve corruption at the county levels, governors, together with their respective CECs in charge of finance, must come up with full disclosure so that we can know with exactitude how much is expended to these counties, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill, as it seeks to come up with a level of uniformity, also challenges counties to do the right things at the right time, Madam Speaker. And therefore, we believe that moving forward as a country, the two levels of government, because we have 48 levels of government, or 48 governments in the country, the national government together with the 47 county governments, Madam Speaker, that there will be a level of sync in what they do. There will be reaching across the aisle so that whereas they are dependent or are independent in what they do, there will be also a level of interdependentness, that the county governments will be listening to what happens in the national government, and the national government will, in return, consult, very aggressively so, by the county governments, Honorable Speaker. I therefore support this bill that has been proposed by the majority leader, and therefore I second, Madam Speaker, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Jared Okello. Honorable members, I now propose the question that the Public Finance Management Amendment Number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 26 of 2024, be read a second time. Honorable members, before I do that, I would like to take this opportunity, honorable members, to welcome students seated in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon, students from Muthaiga Junior School from Gilgil constituency, Nakuru County. You are welcome to the National Assembly to observe proceedings of the House. And honorable members, in line with that, I would like to invite the Honorable Martha Wangari to welcome the students.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The reason you hear Honorable Mboko laughing is because this week I have been receiving schools right from Tuesday and the day before yesterday and yesterday. But Madam Speaker, today I am very delighted because we are hosting a school that is not from town. Yesterday and the day before we were hosting a school called Gilgil Day Secondary School. Today we are hosting a school from the rural Gilgil constituency, from a ward called Elementaita. And Madam Speaker was visiting these young men and young boys and girls 2 weeks ago, and they were very excited to come to Parliament. So I just want to take this opportunity to encourage them that they can be able to learn something from us, and at the end of the day, in a few years to come, Madam Speaker, they will be the ones who will be sitting where we are sitting. And they are very excited today, Madam Speaker, because they have actually sat in the Speaker's Gallery. I want to thank the Clerk's office again and the Speaker's office for allowing and making it possible. And you know, Madam Speaker, since the day not to forget, June the 25th, it's time we are now seeing children this session. So I hope we can be able to keep it up so that they can also be able to learn from us. And we also learn from them, Madam Speaker, because I was interacting with them outside there, and they're asking you questions that you also have to research and also be able to answer. So, Madam Speaker, thank you for the indulgence, and thank you for this chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Martha Wangari. Honorable members, now we can proceed to debate, and I would like to give the first opportunity to the Honorable Rahim Dawood, member for North Imenti. Anyone interested in... may I now put the question? Honorable members, is it the mood of the House that I put the question? Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will as many as have a contrary opinion say nay? Therefore, honorable members, I now put the question that the Public Finance Management Amendment number 2 bill, National Assembly Bill number 26 of 2024 be read a second time. Will as many as have that opinion say aye? Will as many as have a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Public Finance Management Act and for connected purposes. Order number 13, the Culture Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2024, second reading.
Leader of Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that the Culture Bill 2024 be read for the second time. Honorable Speaker, first of all, I wish to commend the Departmental Committee on Sports and Culture for a job well done in this particular bill, Honorable Speaker. As you're aware, this bill was informed by Article 11 of the Constitution of Kenya, which recognizes culture as the foundation of the nation and as the cumulative civilization of the Kenyan people and nation. It commits the government to promote all forms of national and cultural expressions through literature, the arts, traditional celebrations, science, communications, information, mass media, publications, libraries, and other cultural heritage. Notably, since independence, Kenya has never enacted a comprehensive legislative framework to support the integration of culture and cultural heritage in the national development agenda. And therefore, Kenya is yet to fully harness the potential of culture, cultural property, cultural heritage, creative industries, and Kenya's cultural diversity to promote and enhance social culture, political, and even economic development, Honorable Speaker. Kenya's traditional values and morals have been seriously eroded, Honorable Speaker, leading to exploitation of cultural diversity that fuels ethnic animosity and division, because we are really watering down our cultural beliefs and morals. And through the enactment of the Cultural Bill 2024, Kenya shall be in a position to address these issues in a systematic and comprehensive way, Honorable Speaker. Additionally, this bill is also intended to facilitate the implementation of international conventions and treaties that have been ratified by Kenya, including the International Conventions on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights of 1966, the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of the World Cultural and National Heritage of 1972, and even the UNESCO Convention of the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage of 2003. But, Honorable Speaker, let me give you an overview of this bill. This bill, Honorable Speaker, as presented before this House, has 33 clauses, and it seeks to give effect to 11(2)(a) of the Constitution, which mandates the state to promote all forms of national and cultural expression through literature, through arts, through traditional celebrations, through science, through communication, through information, through mass media, through publication, through libraries, and also through cultural heritage. In fact, this also, Honorable Speaker, aligns very well with the current education system, commonly known as the CBC, which seeks to align students with their, strengths, or rather it does, the system itself gives in what you call a SWOT analysis, for lack of a better word, Honorable Speaker, that then will give students a clear line of thought on where they want to go. So this particular bill, Honorable Speaker, puts those particular elements of arts in place, the traditional celebrations, the science, and all those things that involves our lives, Honorable Speaker. Part 1 to 4, in particular, of the bill deals with preliminary matters, which includes the interpretation of key terms and the object of the purpose of the bill. This, of course, it gives then effects of Article 11 of the Constitution, to align itself with Article 11 of the Constitution, Honorable Speaker. And Clause 4 of the bill sets out the guiding principles, which includes the national values and principles set out in Article 10, 27, 201, and 232 of the Constitution, giving equal recognition, Honorable Speaker, dignity, and respect to all cultures, including cultures of minorities or marginalized people. Mr. Speaker, this question of giving dignity to culture is very important. We must appreciate different cultures. We must appreciate that we come from different cultures and different beliefs. And when you see, I'm seeing the member for Samburu looking at me keenly, because I am actually speaking to her heart, that when you see people having their ears, pierced, like like what I see some honorable members, we've seen those several honorable members having their ears pierced. We should appreciate their culture and honor them as they are. And that is what this bill, Honorable Speaker, seeks to do. You appreciate their culture, it has a history, it has a reason to why that is done. So part 1 to 4 seeks to define such. Part 11 of this bill, Honorable Speaker, which is clause 5 to 19 of the bill, establishes the management of culture in Kenya, and delineates the functions of both the national and county governments in clause 5 and 6 respectively. Currently, as it is, by the mere fact that cultures have been led under the management of the county governments, there is really little that the national governments can do. And this particular bill, Honorable Speaker, now seeks now to give clear roles, distinct roles of both the national government and the county governments as far as cultures or the management of culture is concerned. Because we are slowly, if you are not very keen, we are slowly losing our cultures because of course, of several factors. Clause 7 provides for the establishment of a cultural database by the national government and by the county governments, which shall preserve information on culture and cultural heritage. This part also provides for the access of the information so that one is able to learn and see what, Honorable Speaker, if you can protect me from the members behind me. No, I will, the Honorable Member for Thika is holding a meeting, Honorable Speaker, if you can protect me for... And the meeting, you want to? Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, clause 9 provides for the establishment of mechanisms for determination and payment of royalties to communities for the use of their culture and cultural heritage, which shall be guided by the impact, economic value, cultural value, whether it will be used periodic or continuously, the effect among other key factors. Honorable Speaker, royalty is very important. You know, that as we appreciate culture, the monies or the revenue that is generated from such should have an impact on the society that lives within. Currently, Honorable Speaker, very few communities are able to enjoy royalties that are raised from the cultures in different areas. And to be very particular, when you go to Masai Mara, Honorable Speaker, you'll realize that as we pay, as people pay to see animals, to walk around the park, Honorable Speaker, you'll realize that the county governments have invested in people that man around that area, Honorable Speaker, who are not from the national government. The royalties that are enjoyed from such, Honorable Speaker, must replicate to the communities that live from that area. And that is what Clause 9 seeks, Honorable Speaker, to include. Clause 10 outlines the exceptions and limitations to compensation for use of culture and cultural heritage in the public interest. There ought to be compensation, Honorable Speaker, on when we use people's, or rather our communities' cultures. Clause 11 of the bill deals with procedure for the export, import, and transfer of inventoried cultural property under the supervision and direction of the Cabinet Secretary. Clause 12 prescribes the procedure for the application to the Cabinet Secretary and consideration of application for the conduct of research on any cultural property entered in the national database. And even going forward, Honorable Speaker, we should even move it further, even as we took in this clause 12, as we go to the next step. There is need for us to have cultural centers in every county or in every ethnic group area so that people are able to learn. Our children are able to know where we came from and how their forefathers and grandfathers used to live then. Clause 13, 14, and 15 provide for the procedure for the registration of cultural property, the manner of notification when registration has been refused, and the validity of a register and certificate of registration of a cultural property. Clause 17 and 18 deal with the recognition, promotion, and protection of cultural expressions. Clause 19 of the bill, Honorable Speaker, deals with circumstances under which a tangible cultural heritage shall be seized and disposed of under this particular act, Honorable Speaker. And then we move to part 3, which is the final part of this particular bill, Honorable Speaker. It runs from clause 20 to 29 of the bill, and it sets out the offenses and penalties. The offenses include theft of the cultural property, sale of protected cultural property, where you want to enrich yourself on the land that belongs to a particular culture or particular community for cultural purposes, forgery or fraud relating to cultural property, damage to cultural expressions, exportation of cultural property without permit, and unauthorized removal of cultural property, Honorable Speaker. These penalties attract a fine of up to 200,000 shillings to imprisonment or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or even both, Honorable Speaker. Other offenses provided for in the bill, Honorable Speaker, are failure to comply with the conditions for the registration of cultural property, undertaking research into yes, I hear Honorable Mboko seeks clarity. The bill seeks to set penalties and fines for those people who mess around with such, and you can be fined up to 200,000 shillings or imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, or both, Members are invited, of course, as we move to the next stage, to seek amendments or to raise if they consider that too little, or to reduce if they consider it a bit more retributive. Other offenses, Honorable Speaker, provided for in the bill are failure to comply with the conditions for the registration of cultural property, undertaking such research into cultural property without permit. You go to some place, you just want to do a cultural research without permit, loaning cultural properties without a permit, damage to inventoried cultural property, wrongful possession of cultural property. And this, as we move to the next step, Honorable Speaker, it's important for us to know that we'll have again to identify what can be termed as a cultural property, so that you are not found with something that you really own, you take pride in, and somebody says it's a cultural property. Counterfeiting and misrepresentation of cultural property, the use of images of cultural property without permission, providing false and misleading information under the Act, and willfully impeding of obstructing a person performing a function or exercising a power under the Act. Honorable Speaker, the penalties on this, and this is where Honorable Mboko Milemba should be very keen on. The penalties for this, Honorable Speaker, includes fines up to 500,000 shillings or imprisonment for a term of up to 2 years, or both. Again, this House is invited, of course, to make any amendment as we go to the next step, because I still feel that there are members, of course, who feel like the 2 years are very small or very little for such an offender, and they should be raised maybe perhaps to 5. But as it is 2 years or both. Honorable Speaker, part 4 of the bill, I beg your pardon, Honorable Speaker, I'd say that the part 3 was the final one. This is now the very final one. 4 of the bill runs from clause 30 to 33 of the bill, and it gives the general provisions in related to fees and charges and transitional matters. The schedule to the bill provides for the National Cultural Institution, and that is the Kenya Cultural Center, National Libraries, the National Museums of Kenya, the Kenya National Archives, and the Documentation Service. Some of these things exist, Honorable Speaker, but they're not really well marketed in the country, and long are gone. Days have things are changing over time, and people are really moving to now modern cultures instead of going and maintaining the history. Mr. Speaker, I have had a chance to look at the report of the Departmental Committee on Sports and Culture on its consideration of the Culture Bill, and I'm aware that the committee will be proposing amendments during the Committee of the Whole House. And that is why I say even the several members that seek to introduce changes, they are invited during the Committee of the Whole House. And we do agree with the proposed amendments by the committee as they seek to bring better clarity in the bill, as well as to ensure that the bill does not conflict with the existing protection of traditional knowledge and cultural extension Act, that is CAP 218A. Honourable Speaker, in conclusion, I wish to request the honourable members to support the bill, because this bill, Honourable Speaker, will ensure that the cultural property, and cultural heritage are embedded in all spheres of national development agenda. I therefore beg to move, Honourable Speaker, and I ask the Chairman, Departmental Committee of Legal and Justice Affairs, Manenos, to second.
Manenos Affairs.
Proceed, Member for Tharaka and Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the mover and the chief whip of the majority is actually being hilarious by saying that these manenos of law are actually under Justice and Legal Affairs. Allow me, Madam Speaker, to second the bill. The culture bill, a bill that has come to this house so that we are able to actually codify the law relating to various cultural practices in the country. This is a law that is of great interest to most of us because we have a checkered history of our culture, and especially after the advent of the white man who came over with extremely offensive opinions about our culture. Most of what we used to practice as Africans was declared to be repugnant, offensive to morality, as a result of which we were convinced to abandon that culture so that we are able to assume the white man's culture. Time has come for the country to relook at what its position is as regards culture and heritage, and especially when it comes to outright theft of our heritage by people who once told us that our culture was actually repugnant to the good order of human beings. So this is a law that is timely. This is a law that we should look at as a house, and I would encourage every member of parliament to obtain a copy of this bill, go through it, and make an argument in support especially so that we are able to preserve our culture, we are able to preserve our heritage, and where possible, we are also able to make out a living from such culture and heritage. So I have looked at this bill. It is extremely a good bill that begins with trying to define what our culture and heritage is, and also trying to tell us what would happen if you actually breached any provisions of the particular law and you are actually convicted of those offenses. Culture needs to be managed, and we have seen our traditional practices sometimes coming into play when we are doing national events or we are carrying out other cultural events. And unfortunately, this is not codified anywhere. You come, you make your presentation, people decide to pay you tokens, or you are paid nothing at all, and the story ends there. Now we are looking at what would happen if I actually have what they are calling an inventory of my culture that I'm going to practice, and we catch you trying to cheat another person out of that practice. You would be committing an offense under this law, and on conviction, you would actually face a fine, and in default, you may actually go to jail, or you may actually get a fine and a jail term simultaneously. So let us have the management of our culture, which we are actually giving to the national government. Because sometimes we feel the county governments may not have the capacity to manage this culture, but they would have a role in establishing the databases and the areas that have to be codified as heritage. So this is defined in part 2, what the national government is supposed to do and what the county government is also supposed to do. The requirement that you have to register, and after registration, you have to validate your registration from time to time. Then we've been given the offenses. And these offenses are curious. And I would urge the members of parliament to look at part 3, which runs from section 20, which is clause 20, all the way up to clause 29. And I may point out a few of these offenses which I say are curious. For example, under clause 24, any person who intentionally damages or destroys an inventoried cultural property or artifact commits an offense and shall, on conviction, be liable to imprisonment for life. Honorable members, you have to look at this because it may be disproportionate, such that if you ever commit any of the offenses under section 24, you would actually be jailed for life. And the discretion of the court is taken away. I think this may be disproportionate, and we may just have to relook at it when we go to the committee of the whole house. What is also interesting is 25. A person who is found in possession of cultural property to which he or she has no lawful right commits an offense. Again, we have to define what it means to be in possession, because some of these cultural properties are inherited. They are actually inborn with the person, and therefore he may not know when to license that property or not to license the property, and therefore you may actually be convicted of an offense which there would be no, what we know in law as mens rea. And we move on to see the powers of the cabinet secretary, which are to actually make regulations, and this is after public participation, so that every person is informed of what is going to happen when it comes to safeguarding the heritage and the cultural practices which we actually have. And finally, it's important to say that I come from a community that is extremely rich in culture, the Tharaka community in Tharaka Nithi. This is why every year all of us congregate at a place known as Uragate near the Meru National Park for an annual event, the Tharaka Nithi cultural event. And this is very interesting because while we are able to attract as many visitors as we can, there are no regulations on what happens apart from to bring in the Tharaka dancers and their friends from the rest of the county and the Meru county and the cultures that surround Ukambani, and that is all. I think we need a law like this one which will actually tell us what it is we can do, what we cannot do, and what we are likely to benefit from when we have such events every year. Not only just Tharaka, I have seen this happening in Turkana, I've seen it happening in Masai Land. This is all over the country. Everybody coming up with an annual cultural event, but unfortunately, we have no law that guides this, and therefore it becomes a free for all. So with these remarks, it is important that we look at this law, and thereafter, let us look at what regulations are likely to be made, and eventually, we will now be back on track, away from that mentality that we used to have, that everything that is African is repugnant to justice and morality. That must come to an end now, and we start seeing ourselves as a cultured people, a people who have their own culture, which culture we must protect. I know there are areas that we may not have been right. Some practices were actually not as good in terms of human beings' rights, in terms of modern practices, and those we have discarded. But there's a lot more that we have, which we are going to protect under this law, including areas, places that we have termed as heritages of certain communities, which areas must be protected. So with those very many remarks, I beg to second this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Honorable members, I now propose the question that the Culture Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2024, be read a second time. Honorable members, before I put the question, I see that there is some interest in this bill. I request those who are interested in this bill to go to the intervention button. And honorable members, I start with the Honorable Julius Ole Sunkuli, member for Kilgoris.
Madam Speaker, I wish to support, but mainly because my chief whip there of the broad-based government has said that he begs us to support. But in reality, and I say I support, I repeat, I support. But, Madam Speaker, this is actually not a culture bill. It should have been called a cultural artifacts bill. Because what it basically does is to protect the use of artifacts, the things that are cultural. And the offenses that are given are for those who try to destroy cultural artifacts and things that are actually falling within the tangible aspects of culture. But, Madam Speaker, culture is wider than artifacts. And I appreciate the movers of the bill saying that we need to protect the cultural artifacts. I know from where Honorable Osoro comes from, there is a big guitar called the Obokano. Unfortunately, he's not listening because somebody's there. Yes, we need to protect the Obokano so that not everybody can use it as their cultural artifact. Or the Chiondo, or Kiondo from central Kenya. Or the kind of things that we have in Maasai land, where we are happy that nowadays everybody wants to wear a Maasai shuka. But Madam Speaker, we need a law that is going to address what benefits there will come for those of us who have made this wide contribution to the culture of Kenya. And also that we try and prevent counterfeits of these things. I went to a Chinese market one day at a place called Liu, and I saw Maasai beads being counterfeited there. I think if these things are done within Kenya, there should be a law that will protect them. But that is just about artifacts. This bill, therefore, needs a lot of work to be done on it. And the first thing we need to do, which has not been done, is actually to address the real issue. First of all, I don't understand why this bill creates an offense called doing research without permission. I mean, I don't know where the author of that offense is coming from, because research is what actually promotes culture. If somebody wants to know the origins of the Embu dance or the origins of the coastal dances, I think that they should not go and ask anybody for a permit for it. The person could research on that culture, write about the culture, publish the culture, and sell the books about that culture. That culture will become known in Kenya and outside Kenya. So we would like to see that when amendments are made, this idea that you need to seek permission in order to research a particular culture should be removed from our offenses. There is never any excuse why we outlaw research. Research should be done, and there should be no clearing house for research, because in the first place, we are giving this authority to people who themselves do not know what a culture is. Secondly, Madam Speaker, when you look at this law, and it comes to the real issues about culture itself, and that is made in clause 9 of the bill, everything about the cultural law has been given to the counties and to the cabinet secretary. Now, if you want an example of the Maasai culture, the Maasai culture is practiced by the Maasai people. And the Maasai people live in Narok, they live in Kajiado, they live in Tanzania, they live, the map generally, if you want to include the Samburu, you want to include the Gems, I do not see why this is given to the county governments to be their jurisdiction. This should be a national policy, not supposed to be restricted to a particular county. And if you give it to a county to make the law, does it become subsidiary legislation or does it become the main law? This bill should have taken more public participation and put what it wanted to say inside the bill, instead of saying that the law is, let the cabinet minister make the law. That is not law. These things should say exactly what the national policy should be. Because they say that the county government should make the law in line with the national policy. But where is the national policy about culture right now? There is none. It ought to have been put in this law so that we know what actually the law is saying about culture. So, Madam Speaker, the way I see it myself, a lot needs to be done in this bill. Either we begin with it and then keep on building on it. I think not enough public participation was done. It escaped all of us during the public participation period because we would have said what we wanted to put in this bill. And again, another point that I would like not to leave unmentioned is the fact that communities ought to have a way in which they actually determine what goes into their cultural bill. I do not think that people were addressed according to their communities. The Turkanas had their cultural day just a few months ago. I do not know that anybody approached the Turkanas to ask them, what do you want to put in the cultural bill? The Ma communities held their cultural festival in Archer's Post the other day. Nobody asked them what actually needs to go into this cultural bill. The Kalenjin people held their functions in Mount Elgon the other day. Nobody actually approached them to ask them what needs to go into their cultural bill. The coastal area is very rich with culture. Everybody, everywhere, culture is roaring and it's being practiced. But we need to do more. We need to ask communities, what do you want to go into this bill of culture? Otherwise, a lot of work needs to be done. But again, in honor of the Chief Whip who says we support this bill, let us support it as a work in progress. I support.
Thank you. The Honorable Omboko Milemba, member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and let me thank the Whip for moving this bill so well and clearly so, and thank the committee for what they did on trying to bring a bill that will guide culture. And some milestones have been made, whereas we still have room for improvement, like on the role of the county government and the national government. I think the role of the national government should be given more emphasis because culture was supposed to unite us in Kenya. And if we leave it to be managed in enclaves and pockets, like the earlier speaker almost alluded to, then we kill the spirit of using culture as a means to integrate the country. Another milestone was the issue of royalties, which I really loved, because many foreigners and people use cultural artifacts and other expressions without payment. The Maasais, I think, have suffered most because their regalia and other artifactual materials are being used. There is also the issue of database, great milestone highlighted by the bill, because this will assist us to keep track of what is going on within the different cultures and even count them, know the progress. Honorable Speaker, there's the issue of the artifacts transfer and what it contains and so on and so forth. Creation of cultural centers in every county, great. Registration of cultural property, very, very great. And then finally, what I almost questioned was the punishments that have been proposed by the law when you do take away some of these cultural artifacts and other properties. And this I thought was too little, because if you say you'll punish by imprisoning somebody for 2 years or even less, or a fine of 100, 200,000, and you know, this is a person who has affected the entire community and their cultural landscape and expressions, then it looks like we are casualizing what we really intended to achieve in terms of protecting culture and so on and so forth. Given that, Honorable Speaker, the cultural expressions and artifacts are very, very expensive mementos that can fetch very high prices elsewhere when removed from where they are. I talk about this as I look at where I come from, the strong culture of the Abasiekwe community, who are the only rainmakers in this country, and whom in 1963, when it was over-raining in Nairobi and we wanted to get independence, they were invited to come and stop the rains. And now if somebody interferes with them and then is only being fined 200,000 or an imprisonment of 2 years, that is too little. That's the Abasiekwe community, which still continues to make rains. And they have a number of issues about what we need to do, and this law should have provided that base to protect their culture so that it's not exuded by other people. It also reminds me of the Tiriki in Vihiga, who have a very strong cultural base. They have their forests and expressions, landscapes, which they use for circumcision. I think they'll be circumcising this year. And they really need to be protected. So when we casualize the punishments, then this is something we shall discuss and make amendments. But more importantly, Honorable Speaker, is what the earlier speaker spoke to, because the bill seems to leave out certain areas of culture, which I'll call cultural patrimony. In cultural patrimony, you now go beyond the artifacts themselves and deal with cultural expressions and the nature of the culture itself. The law does not seem to go to that extent. It is identifying items and dealing with items of culture. But you know, culture includes even archaeological sites. So how are we going to deal with archaeological sites that are actually the mother of culture and the other cultural expressions that are supposed to be protected? There has been an attempt, Honorable Speaker, to protect culture using the international law. And this bill tries to actually actualize some of those conventions that try to protect culture internationally, which is very good. And one of such conventions has been the Hague Convention in its Article 1, which has tried to protect the cultural property and landscapes even during war. But then our bill must encompass the broadness of culture beyond the artifacts and the physical things that can be seen or carried from one place to another. Of course, not forgetting that what this parliament has always done, and which is wrong, and seems to happen again, is we get tired when we are making the law and indicate that the cabinet secretary shall make certain items or certain comments or certain laws, which otherwise is not his business to do. And this bill has also gone that direction, and therefore, for the third reading, we need to go into the details and make sure that we make a complete law, even if it's not be full, because culture is very broad, but it's a law that will be a beginning to protect our cultural practices moving forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I have the mic. Thank you very much. The Honorable Adan Kainan, member for Aldas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This culture bill introduced by the Leader of Majority seeks to promote, preserve, and institutionalize Kenya's rich and diverse cultural heritage, Madam Speaker. At the core of the bill proposes the establishment of National Cultural Heritage Council, a specialized body tasked with the management, promotion, and protection of Kenya's cultural heritage sites, indigenous practices, and artistic expression. The council's work is to preserve, is to create a culture of continuity and harnessing the promotion of our rich cultural heritage. Madam Speaker, this bill also attempts to create some sort of cultural preservation and revitalization. Kenya, Madam Speaker, is home to over 40 ethnic communities with distinct traditions, languages, artistic expression, and therefore this bill is timely because it attempts to safeguard the endangered languages like the Ogiek, the super language of my good friend, the Honorable Mili, and also attempts to protect sacred sites like the Kaya forest of the Mijikenda, and preserve traditional craftsmanship such as the Maasai beadwork and the Lamu Swahili architecture. Madam Speaker, if you look at the face of Kenya, and you look at Mili Odhiambo and her language, the super language, and I'm sure they have been consumed by the rich Luo culture, they are still struggling, and therefore we need to create a special place for them so that even after the next generations, the super community is still remembered. Madam Speaker, this bill also will boost tourism and economic growth. Cultural heritage is a key driver of heritage tourism, Madam Speaker, which contributes significantly to Kenya's economy. Therefore, by promoting cultural festivals such as the Lake Turkana Cultural Festival, the Lamu Swahili Cultural Festival, and other, e.g. like the Lake Turkana Cultural Festival, Lamu Cultural Festival, and historical landmarks such as Fort Jesus, the Great Rift Valley prehistorical sites, the bill positions Kenya as a premier cultural tourism destination, Madam Speaker. And therefore, this in turn is expected to create job opportunities, support local artisans, and attract international investment. Madam Speaker, this bill, once passed, will also contribute to the strengthening of our national identity and unity. Madam Speaker, Kenya is a diverse nation. I always say that Kenya is a collection of many nation states. The rich historical, cultural heritage of these communities must be documented, contextualized, put into a form that can easily be used by the current generation and the future generation, Madam Speaker. And therefore, this cultural heritage, Madam Speaker, plays a fundamental role in our national identity and cohesion. And this is what this country requires. Madam Speaker, when the colonialists brought us together with our diverse cultural heritage, we attempted to get a Kenyan culture in the form of one language, one heritage, one identity, and we're still struggling. And therefore today, if you ask me, that is one thing that we should prioritize as leadership so that we have the Kenyan culture, the Kenyan identity, the Kenyan dress, the Kenyan way of thinking, the Kenyan way of doing things, so that that becomes the unique Kenyan identification. And therefore, I hope this bill, once passed, Madam Speaker, will accelerate our shared history and indigenous knowledge system, Madam Speaker. And therefore, again, once that is done, we'll see, as the bill aims to instill patriotism, encourage cultural pride, and bridge ethnic divides, ultimately reinforcing the sense of being a Kenyan, Madam Speaker. And this is one thing that has been lacking. Madam Speaker, over the years, we have prided ourselves. And this is one thing that really affects our national unity. Kenyans are known for their resilience. Kenyans are known for their focus. Kenyans are known for their rich cultural heritage. But Madam Speaker, what we have lacked is a law that will help us coalesce around that identity and project and promote and protect that Kenyan identity that will demonstrate the uniqueness of the Kenyan culture, not only locally, but also internationally, thus earning Kenya being a unique tourist destination, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, countries like Turkey, I wish you had that. Countries like Turkey, countries like United Arab Emirates, countries like Japan benefit from tourism. And yet they lack so many other natural resources, Madam Speaker. Can we be in the league of the same nation, Madam Speaker, once we identify and maximize on this critical national heritage, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, over the years also, there has been an attempt, because of this lack of identity, to profile, to stigmatize, and to divide the Kenyan society along regional lines, along regionalism, along tribal lines, Madam Speaker, along negative ethnicity, Madam Speaker. And this has discouraged, Madam Speaker, our identity as one united, sovereign state called Kenya, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, immediately after independence, we attempted to promote English at the expense of Kiswahili, Madam Speaker, which is a local, our own indigenous language, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's the high time that we also identify English is very good. It's the language of the white-collar job seekers. But equally, Madam Speaker, we also need to promote Kiswahili so that the Kenyan communities, Kiswahili is a collection of many languages, the Arabic language, the Turkish language, the Portuguese language, the Bantu language, and many other languages, Madam Speaker. And therefore, at times when we interact with our colleagues from the East African community, in particular the Tanzanians, we are lost. Which is the most refined Kiswahili? Is it the Kenyan Kiswahili, or the Tanzanian Kiswahili, or the East African Kiswahili, or the Central African Kiswahili, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, it's because of this that once this bill is passed, we hope and pray that some of these things will be collected, put together, and give us a clear identity. Madam Speaker, on the face of it, there are clear gaps in this particular bill, which must also be addressed. Madam Speaker, we currently have the National Museum of Kenya, we have the Kenya National Archive, and we have the Kenya Film Corporation. Madam Speaker, the role of these organizations must also be clearly acknowledged in order to avoid any perceived jurisdictional conflict, Madam Speaker. Because it is very easy to legislate this, and yet tomorrow, National Museum will come and say, this bill encroaches on their mandate. The National Archive will come and say, this bill encroaches on their mandate. The Kenya Film Commission will also say, this bill encroaches on their mandate. Madam Speaker, in the third reading, we must look at this, and I'm sure with the proper legal minds, this can also be addressed, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this also requires, once this bill is passed, there is need to build capacity. Because we have many professionals, academic professionals. We need to have specialized people to deal with our culture, to deal with this particular, the implementation of this particular bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we have passed many laws. Many laws. Madam Speaker, at times enforcement becomes a problem. We pass laws, and this country is known. Madam Speaker, in 1999, I had the privilege, and allow me to say this, I had the privilege of being a member of the Finance Bill, and Finance Committee, sorry. the Finance Committee, and we went to Malaysia.
I'll give 2 minutes. I'll give you two. I'll give you 2 for your 5 terms in this house. So 2 minutes.
Passing bills is one thing.
The next mic.
When we went to Malaysia in the name of benchmarking, Madam Speaker, we were told, we were with the late Honorable Michuki and many others, we were told, we went around, we were welcomed by the Deputy Speaker, by the clerk, and finally we asked for a document that we will use to improve the facilities in Nairobi and many other urban centers. Shockingly, the clerk went to the archive, the library, and gave us a document that they borrowed from Kenya in 1974. And we were told to use the same document for benchmarking. I will not be surprised that this bill and many other bills similar bills are in our archives. So what I'm trying to say, it's very easy to pass this bill. Are we ready to implement? Are we ready to domesticate this? Are we ready to enforce this? And this is one thing that we have been lacking. Very good in theories, very good in legislations, but when it comes to implementation, we are not very good. And therefore, this is a good bill, and I hope and pray that once we go through the 3rd reading, we'll have a bill that meets the test of time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Before you, Honorable Johanna Ngeno, I want to give an opportunity to the minority whip. So the Honorable Millie Odhiambo, please. Then we'll have Honorable Johanna Ngeno.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for indulging me, Madam Speaker, because as I'd requested, you know, we are having a current meeting with the different departments on the budget policy statements. So I have to run back. Madam Speaker, I wish to say that I support this bill. And Madam Speaker, there is definitely need for cultural preservation. And Madam Speaker, because culture is what shows our identity as a people. And people who don't have their culture or don't preserve their culture are a lost people because they don't know who they are. Madam Speaker, because I don't want to adversely mention a friendly country, of late I've been to many countries. And I can tell you there's one country that has built completely, you know, they brought a city anew. And if you actually look at that city, there's something that is lacking. It lacks a spirit because it lacks the culture. That they have done so much in the last 5 or so years to modernize it, but because the modernized aspect doesn't show you where they're coming from, the city feels empty. It doesn't have a spirit because it doesn't show what the people are like. And so, Madam Speaker, if you look at, for instance, somewhere like Marrakesh in Morocco, it shows where they're coming from. It's so beautiful, it shows the culture. But culture is not just manifest in the physical, but I like this bill because it just shows also that it is also in very different aspects, including language. And as a person who is a cultural minority, I know what that means. Madam Speaker, I am born a Suba. My father is a Suba. And I have seen in my generation how that has actually transformed over the years. Where up to my grandfather has a Luo name and a Suba name. All the people ahead of him have very Suba Bantu names. All of us are from my grandfather down, now only have Luo names. And we have lost the Suba names. Madam Speaker, fortunately, the language has been restored. So the Suba now speak Suba, but not all Suba speak Lusuba. But for a fact, we have almost lost all the culture in relation to Suba, except a few. And I want to thank the organizations that have been doing cultural events that seek to sustain what is a little that is remaining of the Suba people as a people. And Madam Speaker, I am actually a very proud Suba, even though I can tell you I'm both Suba and Luo because my mother is Luo. And I love that we preserve both the Luo culture and the Suba culture. Madam Speaker, one of the issues that I'd want to also indicate, which I've seen this bill commenting on, but we need to strengthen, is the issue of intellectual property rights on our culture. That there are so many people that have been appropriating our cultural issues. Give example of even our cultural dressing, Madam Speaker. And they go and sell it at a song, yet it is actually who we are. And in the US now, it's a very big issue called cultural appropriation. That when you see people doing or saying things that is not there, people are saying, I don't want to culturally appropriate. And in the same manner, we need to use those same terminology that we actually criminalize cultural appropriation, or find a way, even if we don't criminalize it, to make sure that we preserve our culture and the things that are very important to us that other people may wish to appropriate. There must be a way in which they pay back to our societies for using that. Madam Speaker, I can tell you for a fact, when I go outside, I wear this band on my head. And in Kenya, people just say, oh, Millie, we actually see you like it's an insignia, it's what shows who you are. But in a lot of communities in Kenya, we actually have this. It's just at a modernized mind. In the Luo culture, if you see me doing the beaded one, it is called ligisa. And ligisa is worn by women in leadership. So if you see me wearing that, it basically says, in my culture, it shows that I'm a woman leader. But for now, because we don't actually take it seriously, when people see me, thinks it's just an issue, a statement of fashion. Yes, it's fashionable, but it's also cultural. And it is not just amongst the Luo community, it's amongst very many communities, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we must also see how we link culture with the tourism. I want to thank the Parliament that they recently organized a very good training, and the training was on PPP, public-private partnerships. And Madam Speaker, one of the things that I actually picked up from that is the immense potential of linking tourism and culture. And Madam Speaker, I recently, together with my husband, we've recently visited a place called Nido in the Philippines. And Madam Speaker, we pay quite a bit of money to do things which you could do here in Kenya very easily. Things like cultural immersion and doing things that have to do with our culture. Visiting a spiritual center like Atego Island in my constituency, visiting the two bird islands in my constituency, or the cultural caves in Fagano Island, amongst others. We have a lot that we get from our culture that we can use to, encourage tourism. Madam Speaker, however, I just want to say that I have a rider in relation to this bill that we must strengthen, which is the issue of harmful cultural practices. The Constitution outlaws harmful cultural practices, and I would want us to strengthen the sections of this bill that deals with harmful cultural practices, and say that even though we actually allow cultural practices, there are certain cultural practices that are harmful, such as female genital mutilation, beading, forced wife inheritance, early and forced marriage of young girls. And Madam Speaker, you find there are people, when you go to communities, they want to justify for you. Before I came here, I used to represent a lot of young girls and women in court. And I remember one time when we were in Kajiado court, and the Children Act had just already passed. And we arrested some old man who had married a 10-year-old girl. And when we went there, he said, no, but this is allowed in my culture. And then when we told him, no, we cannot allow you, it's no longer allowed in law, then he said, did Honorable Saitoti know that you passed such a law? Because he thought then Honorable Saitoti should have stopped us from passing a law stopping him from marrying a 10-year-old girl. So because of that, Madam Speaker, we must put a rider that even though we have culture, there are certain cultural practices that are retrogressive. But also, Madam Speaker, one of the things that I want us to do is to enhance the historical bit where we have now distorted culture. And Madam Speaker, if you actually look at our historical issues, you discover, for instance, amongst the Luo community, women were really respected and exalted. But now people are actually doing the reverse. If you look at the bigger clans in Luo, they start with a female name. It's almost like the House of Mumbi. We start with the Kanyamwa, Kanyadoto, Kanyekela, Kanya something. They are all about women. But now we are being told women cannot lead. Who told you women cannot lead? We are in charge of clans. So if we are in charge of clans, why can we then not lead? We must put our history correctly, and our history respected and exalted women. And I want to say that I'm very happy the House of Mumbi has actually kept that. And so we know that's why you see a lot of women in Kikuyu land get elected, because they preserved that history. But in some of our areas, we are losing that. And so we have people creating their own stories about what was there in culture. Madam Speaker, I support, and I look at it more keenly so that I see if there are areas, the areas that I've spoken, if they are not well covered, that will bring amendment. I support. Thank you.
Thank you. The Honorable Johanna Ngeno.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also wish to make a small contribution of this matter before this House, especially something that touches on our cultures. You know, Madam Speaker, when we speak about culture, it means so many things to most of us, especially those of us who were brought up in a very serious cultural background. Madam Speaker, when I grew up, a friend of mine who was a teacher used to tell me that an uncultured person is an uncivilized person. To the extent that in most of the cases, people used to believe that when you follow your culture, it's like you are primitive. It's like you're doing backward things. But Madam Speaker, as time went by, we realized that even what the colonial governments and the white people brought us here in Africa was their culture. So that when you even compare the biblical writings, you compare with what our people used to believe in, there is no difference. It's only that ours was not in written form. Only that, but we used to pray to the same God. We believe in the same God. It's only the names are different. But what we were calling our God is the same God that the Bible teaches us. The cultures that we had, the way we prayed and how we behaved, the way we circumcised our boys, and all that, Madam Speaker, is an indication that our culture was just thrown out because somebody else wanted us to adopt their culture so that we forget about ours. Madam Speaker, culture defines who we are. It's our background, and it is something that we must live with, Madam Speaker, so that we must find ways of promoting our culture so that it can be inherited from generations to generations. Culture, Madam Speaker, is the heartbeat of humanity. It is actually how most of us were brought up. And if you were to ask everybody, they were brought up in a certain culture. Even if it is those who were brought up in Nairobi, still, they will go back to their cultures. They will be taught on how their people used to behave, the kind of clothing people used to have, etc., etc. So therefore, Madam Speaker, I wish to support this particular bill that touches on how to protect the cultural artifacts, the identity of our nation and our people. And of course, Madam Speaker, to look into what exactly do we need to do so that our culture is not lost. Madam Speaker, first we talk about the artifacts. Artifacts, Madam Speaker, are tools which were used by our people. And each and every people, each and every community has their own ways or their own means or their own artifacts. Madam Speaker, and this one ranges from clothing to the kind of artifacts they used to use, whether when they were going to pray or their praying sites, or what they use also to appease the enemies, or what they used to, when they want to appease their gods, when they want to give blessings, when they want to do their traditional circumcisions, even when the elders were having their drinks and like the current kind of drinking. Madam Speaker, those are cultural artifacts that we must protect by all means. Madam Speaker, I remember at the beginning of Kibaki government, I think it was around 2003-04, the people from the Kalenjin community who had lost who had lost a very great warrior and an overseer and a Laibon called Koitalel Samoa, disputed and petitioned the government to ensure that they return the artifacts which had been looted by the colonial government at that time and took them away to their country. And at that time, Madam Speaker, the president of that time helped that community to bring back their artifacts, only that they did not surrender the skull or the head of the Laibon. Madam Speaker, those artifacts have a very serious meaning to the communities where that Laibon came from. And that is why it was very important that they bring back those particular artifacts. Madam Speaker, even in many other areas, many other communities, even the sub-tribes where we come from, there are artifacts which were confiscated, like the stools, the three-legged stools, which were used for prayers and were used also for blessings, and which were confiscated by the Europeans. Madam Speaker, there are those ones that remained. There are those ones that we still have in our homes. And this law, Madam Speaker, protects the misuse and the looting and the stealing of these particular artifacts which can help, or which were used as our traditional memories for traditional use. Madam Speaker, when we talk about culture also touches on the cultural clothing. Every community, Madam Speaker, in this country have their own traditional clothing, their own cultural clothings. And Madam Speaker, I would wish also one day in this house, Madam Speaker, we introduce a cultural day where every member, because at least we all come from particular backgrounds, particular communities, so that we can say this is a cultural day where every member of this house will wear their cultural clothing, so that we dress the way our communities used to dress. And you will be shocked, Madam Speaker, because we have our dresses, cultural dresses that fits us so well, and they are so good, so that when you see our ladies, if they were to put on those particular clothings and dresses, Madam Speaker, you'll be shocked at how beautiful they look. And even men, when they put on those particular dresses, clothes, Madam Speaker, you will imagine how also men handsomely look, apart from the ones we wear in Parliament. Like when we put on, Madam Speaker.
I know the Honorable Irene Mayaka is next in my list, but I think you are saying you have a point of order, Honorable Irene Mayaka? Yes. Please proceed. What is out of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the Honorable Member is out of order because he's telling us that we only look beautiful when we wear cultural clothes. What does he mean? What is he insinuating? Is he trying to say that right now we don't look beautiful? He needs to withdraw.
Madam Speaker,
I thought we could address the first point of order. Honorable Member for Emukuru, what do you have to say about that?
And I will address Mheshimiwa Milli's also point of order. I know what she is.
No. You cannot address a point of order when you have not heard it.
I will, Madam Speaker, I just want to say that, you know, when you look, I said our women, our ladies will look even more beautiful when they dress in their traditional dress. Just like our men will look more handsome when they dress in our cultural dresses. So, Madam Speaker, what I meant is, we are beautiful.
Chairman, order.
Our ladies are beautiful.
Order. We have another point of order by the Honorable Millie Odhiambo. Please take your seat. What is out of order, Honorable Millie Odhiambo?
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Madam Speaker, I'm just worried that the member seems to suggest that we should be coming to Parliament dressed, naked with just a small thing underneath. Because culturally, that's how we dressed. We were naked with something underneath. Madam Speaker, is that really in order? Is that what we are implying? Our culture, we were half naked, Madam Speaker. The world is evolving, and that is part of culture. So are you suggesting that members should be coming to the house naked?
Madam Speaker, we should be proud of our culture. And it doesn't matter how that culture looked like. whether we used to put on, and after all, Madam Speaker, when you look at the kinds of dressing that we have today, our ladies are almost naked, and yet that is not even our cultural dress. So what I meant, Madam Speaker, is that we would, let us be proud of where we are, where we came from, who we are, and that starts from our artifacts, to our dress, to our food, to the food that we eat, to the sites that we normally visit. Because, Madam Speaker, even the cultural sites that we visit will look more, even healing, than the sites that we visit, like even the National Assembly. Madam Speaker, we normally had places that we will go for cultural prayers, and they look so soothing than even any other place. So what I meant, Madam Speaker, is that our ladies are beautiful, but they will be more beautiful if they were to put on.
Well, you've done very well to defend yourself. The Honorable Irene Mayaka, and thank you for your patience, Irene.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I also want to support this particular bill, which I think is very well placed before the House. And Honorable Speaker, this is a bill that actually gives meat to bone to Article 11 of the Constitution, because that already speaks about protecting, promoting, and defending our culture, but it doesn't give us the structure and the how to do that in a manner that actually ensures that all the cultures within our country are actually protected. Madam Speaker, the fact that as a nation we have a variety of cultures is actually a very good thing, because we are able to showcase the different aspects of who the people of Kenya are. And Honorable Speaker, just as a few members have already said, is that most of us who are city-born children, who have not had the opportunity to interact with our culture, we don't really understand, unless you had parents like mine who ensured that you knew about the traditional dances of Abagusi, the traditional liquor of Abagusi, and various other traditions. You will not be able to really interact with that. Honorable Speaker, and also, this is actually a very good coincidence, because I know you skipped statements, but my statements was actually alluding to an aspect of protecting some of the cultural sites that the people of Abagusi and especially Nyamira County has. For example, Honorable Speaker, we have a place in Manga Hills that is called the Engoroya Manga, where it has been said that when you drop something in that particular hole, it goes all the way to Lake Victoria. And that is one of the sites that has been beholden by our people. We have cultural stones there that actually look like a person. We have cultural huts there that people actually go there and pray. And actually, Honorable Speaker, when people go to visit Manga Hills and those specific places, like the men dress in suits out of respect for those sites. And what they do there is that they go, they pray for the community, they pray for their families. And these are some of the things that I'm actually seeking to protect and to ensure that it is preserved so that even our children get to learn about it. Honorable Speaker, the other thing that I really like is that the bill even speaks about our language, because most of the people, most of our children now, because they are born from families of different communities, they're not able to speak our languages. And also because of school again. Unless you deliberately, as a parent, go out of your way to teach your children their languages, their ethnic languages, they do not even speak it. And those are some of the things that we need to reserve. Honorable Speaker, I just want to speak about some of the clauses that for me really stood out. Like, for example, clause 9 that speaks of establishing royalties. That is very important because we do not want these cultures to fade away. We do not want, for example, the Maasai shuka to fade away because it has not been protected by royalties. We do not want the sisal skirt that the Luos use to dance their traditional dances to fade away because it is not protected. Or even, Honorable Speaker, our traditional alcohol, ebusa. I know different communities call this by different names, but we do not want that to also disappear as well. Clause 10 speaks about compensation of people's culture. And on this particular one, I'm very interested and very keen on it. Because, for example, if you go to a wedding and people dance our obokano from the Gusi community, I'd like to see a situation where royalties are actually paid back to the community. or the rib in a dance, that for us, we use that dance when we are inviting rains to come to our community. Honorable Speaker, the other clause is clause 11, that speaks about exports and imports of products. Again, very interesting, and I'm very biased in terms of giving examples from my community, the Abagusi community, because we are famously known for the soapstone culture and different items that are made out of the soapstone. But this is something that has slowly disappeared. We are seeing a situation where it is now individuals who are doing the exports on their own, instead of actually having it being like a community thing that is being done, so that people out there know that when you get a salt shaker or a tot glass or a mug for drinking tea that is made out of soapstone, you know that this has come from the Gusii community. And if you can have a way of even ensuring that this is even engraved and the royalties are protected, then that will be a fantastic thing. The other clause, Honorable Speaker, is clause 18 that speaks of promotion of culture. And Honorable Speaker, this particular one, I just want to connect it with the Utamaduni Day. Because yes, we have Utamaduni Day, we have the national celebration, but for me, this is a celebration that should actually be devolved down to different communities. So that on this day nationally, we know that as the people of Kenya, we are all celebrating our specific culture. I also like the fact that we want to have cultural centers that mushroom out of having this particular bill in place, so that if you come to Nyamira County, or you go to Baringo, or you go to Kirinyaga, or you go to Samburu, there's a place where you can actually go and see that this is where people have managed to it's like a museum where you can be able to see different artifacts. In Nyamira, for example, Honorable Speaker, we have a restaurant that the owner of that restaurant has actually set aside one area where you can go into our traditional huts, you can see how the busa was being made, you can have an opportunity to eat our traditional vegetables, chinsaga, managu, you can be able to eat our traditional ugali, you can be able to see the setup of the Gusii families and how where the eldest son would stay in the homestead, and the younger sons and the wife and all that. But having said that, Honorable Speaker, about all the beauties of our culture that we can actually defend, for me, the one thing that I also want us to be very careful is the promotion of the retrogressive culture. And this we need to check the bill and confirm, which we will do, so that if there's any particular place that does not categorically speak about the retrogressive culture, then we can set that aside. Retrogressive in the sense of, for example, for us, the FGM practice. That is definitely not a culture that we would want to promote. So we have to be very careful to ensure that these cultures that are very retrogressive are not encouraged. Honorable Speaker, having said that, and so that I also save time for the other members, is that, yes, I really want us to celebrate this bill, but also I do not want this to be one of those bills that is just put on the shelf somewhere after its assent. My wish is that, and I know the majority party represented by Honorable Naomi is here and they can listen, is that the day that the President assents to this bill, that there's an actual celebration awareness at State House of all the cultures in this country alongside that signing of that bill, so that everybody in this country is aware that we do have a bill in place that is going to protect our culture. We don't want a situation where when you talk about the bill outside there and everyone asks you, when was that assented to? We don't have anything like that. So the awareness, the communication out there has to be extremely powerful so that everyone is really aware of that. And finally, Honorable Speaker, and I like that some of the concerns that we voiced here about Kenya not having a national outfit when we go for national functions or when our athletes represent us out there, at least at the Paris Olympics, we had some sort of a national culture that portrayed the Maasai culture that was worn out there. And it was very exciting that majority of the other participants from other countries actually recognized that Kenya has a beautiful outfit. I wish we could even adopt that as our national dress for our party. So, I mean, sorry, not for our party, for our country, so that anytime we have representation out there of people going to represent the country, they can wear our national outfit. Having said that, Honorable Speaker, I do support the bill and I submit. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, member for Kwanza.
At long last. Madam Speaker, I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank all the members that you have contributed on this bill. And I think we have actually exhausted the bill. And as the previous speaker just mentioned, the third reading on this bill, let's take action. When the President assents to this bill, Madam Speaker, I want us to move forward because there are so many things that have gone wrong. I'm a little older than some of the members here, and I can tell you things have gone out. The next 50 years or even 20 years to come, Kenya will not be Kenya that you and I would have admired to be, because, Madam Speaker, things are going haywire. I come from a culture in Luhya land, and we had a very good culture. For example, the circumcision of the Luhya. You know, we had a special way of going for that particular circumcision. Today, you know, it's a laughing stock, you know. And somebody mentioned, and I think I want to quite agree with whoever mentioned, for us, those days, and I saw those from my own older brothers and other neighbors, what have you, for you to go for circumcision, you went naked. From the river, you go to the river, and from there you are taken almost 2-3 kilometers to your home, and you are operated there openly. Today, Madam Speaker, nothing like that is happening. Things have gone off. Then, of course, those days, and in fact, even as recent as maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, when a child gets married, you know, a boy cannot go and greet the mother-in-law. It's out of respect, not anything else. Today, he can go and hug the mother-in-law, which is actually wrong. In our culture, it's not supposed to be like that. Madam Speaker, we have a problem. This country must be protected. I have a case, a specific case, for example. We had Bomas of Kenya. If those of you have not gone there, in fact, you go there now, it's no longer the Bomas of Kenya we used to know, because it was an area for cultural preservation. Bomas of Kenya is no more. You go to Bomas of Kenya, you will have the Maasai's culture, the Kikuyu's culture, you know, Luyas, what have Luos, and you see that culture was very, very impressive. You're there, you pay the money, and you are there for some time, and of course you come back and say, okay, is this how this community behave? That again is gone. Go to Bomas of Kenya, you know, it's not the same thing. It's now just a business area, doing other things. So we should actually, because I was asking my colleague here, we have a ministry for culture and sports. That ministry must be revived. That ministry must be given guidelines to be able to preserve some of those cultures that actually are very, very important for us to be able to maintain. Because I know for sure that the colonialists came, and when they came, you know, people now want to behave like a Mzungu. But look, that again is now something under the bridge. We just have to behave our own way. We have to revive. For example, in Luhya culture, if a child goes to get married, he has to pay almost 13 cows. Today, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. And it's a culture that actually a Luhya boy marrying another person from another area, you pay the money before anything else, even before the wedding. Today, it's no longer there. It's just to understand each other. Like my brother who was okay, I don't want to mention that. But that again, Madam Speaker, we should do something about it. This bill, when it comes to third reading, as members of this parliament, to be able to have very good intervention, the closet you can be able to correct some of the areas that you feel you should be able to correct, because it's just for the interest of this country. not because of our personal interest, but the interest of this country, that we actually maintain our culture and so that we are distinct from other people. Because you go out here in the world, you see people behave very differently. And so I want to say that, Mr. Speaker, as you take over, as you take over the seat, I want you to also take note of this. And I think let's have a house full in the third reading of this bill, and let's look at areas where we can be able to put some inputs and be able to see if the culture of this country can be improved through a specific ministry. And don't just put that Ministry of Culture and Social Services and Sports or whatever it is, should be able to take up some of the roles that we are talking about and be able to see what it can do. And last year, not least, I think the county government, and the central government of this country should work in collaboration to be able to maintain some of those cultural areas. There's some areas which actually, some of them are still there, they are neglected, but it should be revived, so that through the county government, those cultural centers be revived for the benefit of our future, so that we have a good historical background. So what will be our grandchildren write about Kenya? It will be nothing. So we want that cultural centers to be revived, be protected through the Ministry of Culture and Social Services, and it should be also be replicated in the county government. Should have the similar ministry or department in the in the county government to be able to maintain these areas, because it's important, Mr. Speaker, that we keep these people as soon as it is. And of course, then we'll have, like this bill is actually saying, of course, anybody now, once we are through with that, anybody destroying any of these cultures, whatever, should actually be punished in terms of paying fine. And that fine should be going, of course, as you know, if you are going to Bomas of Kenya, you pay a lot of money. And there was a Minister of Culture was getting that as an income. Similarly, anybody interfering with any of these cultural centers should be, and of course the behavior, whatever it is, should be fined. And those things are being fined through wazee wa mtaa, or the communities can be able to come up with whatever. So that again is something that we have to revive for the benefit of our country. I want to take this opportunity to thank the leader of the majority to have come up with this particular bill, and I think it's very timely, and I hope and pray that we'll support it to the last thing and be able to have it implemented immediately. His Excellency puts a concert on the same. I want to thank you and I support this bill.
The Honorable John Waweru.
Mr. Speaker, I must thank you. I must thank you profusely for giving me this opportunity. And secondly, I have to say that this is a very laudable effort by the Committee on Sports, Youth and Culture under the leadership of the Honorable Wanyama. Mr. Speaker, we are discussing about culture. And in this context, Mr. Speaker, we are actually going into the heart of a discussion for the fight of the soul of a people. Mr. Speaker, it has been said before that if you want to disenfranchise an individual, what you do is you deny them their mother tongue and you take their father's name. Because if you deny someone their mother tongue, everything that is housed in language, whether you call it belief, whether you call them their truth or their identity, it is housed in the language that they speak. In their father's name, an individual finds their identity. And to that extent, Mr. Speaker, then, the Swahili are very right when they tell us that mwachamila ni mtumwa. Mr. Speaker, this vessel that we are calling culture is the one, as I have said, that carries a people's identity, their history, their belief, and even their truth. From the culture I come from, Mr. Speaker, when you refer to your mother, you call her Maito. Maito, if you extrapolate the name, is two words. There is the word ma and ito. Ma means the truth. Ito means ours. So the name mother, in essence, means our truth. And that is why you find that in this patriarchal society, the Kikuyu culture is unable to thrive because by its very formation, the Kikuyu culture was not supposed to be a patriarchal culture. In fact, we all believe that we came from Mombi, the creator. And Mombi is the only name that humanity shares with God. It is the only word in our dictionary as the Kikuyu speaking people that a man shares a word, a name with God. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, sorry, Honorable Speaker, I have to say that the tragedy that we seek to remedy by having a bill that gives a framework for the protection of our culture has to do with us finding our way back. What in Gekoyo they would call Woshokiarowe Mokaro, making sure that the river gets back to its course. Because as we speak today, we have been knocked off our, what you would call our track of organic cultural development and civilization. And how it happened was very systematic, Mr. Speaker. The moment an individual showed up in our country carrying three very dangerous things, they were carrying on one hand a Bible, a gun, and education and what you would call government. And with that, they were able to rub off our cultures to the extent that today, Mr. Speaker, any individual who professes the Christian faith can give you the lineage of one Jesus Christ of Nazareth all the way back to his lineage to the house of David, all the way back to the house of Abraham and his son Isaac, and all the way back to the creation story, Adam. And they can give you a chronology of who gave birth to who gave birth to who, and these are tens of generations. However, Mr. Speaker, even I myself would struggle to give my lineage beyond 7 generations. I might profess that I am Kiarie. Kiarie wa Wawero, Wawero wa Ngeve, Ngeve wa Geshi, Geshi wa Kangora. And then beyond that, Mr. Speaker, 7 generations down, then I get lost, Mr. Speaker. As such, Mr. Speaker, then, whatever it is that was housed in the language that I speak, it faces a great danger today. I might be the last of our people who will be able to speak the language that my father spoke and my mother spoke. To that extent, then, Mr. Speaker, the discussion this afternoon becomes extremely important when we juxtapose it with where the world is today. When we talk about the world today, 2 great things are affecting culture. 1, globalization. 2, technology. And they're working hand in hand, Mr. Speaker. That today as we speak, there are large language models that are being developed using data that is scraped off the internet to form what you would call emerging technologies in artificial intelligence. But let us look at them, Mr. Speaker. The language models that we are speaking about today in the world of artificial intelligence and emerging technologies, of the data that they are scraping out of the internet, we are told that 46.5% of that data is in one language, English. German follows closely, Russian follows after, but then, at what point then will my Gikuyu language or my Kamba language from my lineage be onboarded onto this new development in what we are calling the 4th Industrial Revolution? As such, Mr. Speaker, what has been happening then is a lot of cultural appropriation. We know that in this country, there are artifacts that throughout history have been plucked out of our country and are in exhibition and being monetized in capitals abroad, in museums abroad, Mr. Speaker. The man-eating lions of Tsavo, 2 of them, male lions that did not have a mane, a spectacle to behold. When they were shot by a man called Peterson, they were then taken to some museums in Western capitals where they are to date. We are told by historians that one Koitalel Arap Samoei was decapitated, and his head and maybe the skull at that point was taken to museums abroad. Those museums do have entry fee. There are researchers who make big researches out of the data that is in those museums. However, is the Savo community benefiting from this appropriation of this culture? Are the Kipsigis benefiting from their leader being exhibited in a museum for now close to a century and some more years? So that, Mr. Speaker, then, the need for a comprehensive legislative framework that enables us to support the integration of culture, the cultural properties in this country, and cultural heritage becomes a priority, Mr. Speaker. Now, here is the critique, Mr. Speaker, that even as we are speaking to this bill as is, it is one devoid of specificities, Mr. Speaker. That in the format that it is and the style that it is big on cultural artifacts. However, culture is larger than artifacts. There are many elements of culture that are not covered in this bill as it exists. So much so that the option we have as a House is to either pass it as it is and then seek for places to amend later, or we might decide then, and in the third reading, Mr. Speaker, we might find a place in the clauses that exist or introduce new clauses where we are able to cover a wider definition of culture rather than zero in on just cultural artifacts. But now the bill has presented, Mr. Speaker, because it is big on cultural artifacts, then we can talk about issues to do with intellectual property. Mr. Speaker, whatever is covered here on intellectual property is a bit shallow. And my question was whether that shall be covered in subsequent or subsidiary legislation, maybe in regulation, or whether there shall be another bill that comes to take care of intellectual property. But finally, Mr. Speaker, I have to say that the essence is urgent. One, for the preservation of our culture and the protection of our culture. But secondly, Mr. Speaker, and most importantly, this House is the House that ratifies international treaties, international conventions. And so, Mr. Speaker, the treaties that we have ratified, some by UNESCO and many others to do with culture, have been given life and effect by us processing a bill that takes care of culture. The Constitution, Mr. Speaker, in Article 11, also is given effect by us passing this bill. And it is for that reason, Mr. Speaker, that I stand to support and seek to amend in the third reading. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on this bill.
The Honorable Christine Ombaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to what is very, very important in our lives. We are talking about a bill that deals with culture and definition of culture. What is culture? It's a way of life as lived by a people at a particular time in history. It means that culture is our way of life. It's the language we speak, it's the song we sing, it's the food, the dress that we have, the food we eat, the sports, everything about our lives is culture. But it is as lived by our people at a particular time in history. It means that culture evolves. It is dynamic. It changes from time to time. The people of the past had their own culture. It moved on and changed on, and we acquired others, and we dropped other ways of culture, other ways of survival, and we moved on and acquired others. Just like language dies. When a language dies, then that culture is finished. That culture, the people of that language will not exist because the language has died. It is important to realize that culture is our identity. If it dies, we are dead. It is cardinal. It is in our lives. It is part and parcel of us. It is our gene that if it is not there, we are not human beings. Unfortunately, our culture, African culture, Kenyan culture, all the tribes that we have, 42 or 43 that we have. These are cultures that are very, very important, but they have been interfered with in the past through colonialism. And it is still being interfered with. It is still changing. It is still not the same as a long time ago. But we need to preserve them because we are preserving our identity. We will be laughed at if we do not preserve it. If I lose my Luo language, where will I belong? What will people think of me? But our children are losing it, and we are not caring. We do not give a hoot about the language that our children are speaking today. They are mixing up English and Swahili and a bit of their local language. Sometimes they speak pure American English, and they cannot utter a word, even the word thank you, even the word asante sana, they cannot speak it because they speak European language. We are, as parents, have also failed in preserving the culture of our people because we enjoy to see our children speak British or American English. Secondly, we have tried in this country to preserve culture through the museums that we have. But unfortunately, again, these museums, they're shallow. I was in a committee of sports last parliament, and we had a chance to visit a number of museums that we had. It was shameful to see how shallow, how empty they were. There were no anything that would indicate the culture of our people. They were scanty, they were too old, they were torn apart. We need to create or come up with what we can show to our children as part of what is in the museum. The museums are not having the right things. They're too old, too broken apart. Nobody seems to put money there to ensure that even our museums have the items, the artifacts that require our understanding of the past. That is missing. The school system has tried, I must say that, because we normally have school music festivals, drama festivals. These are events that help us nurture the past, bring out the past. Our children try to wear those clothes of long ago so that they can sing these songs when they come for competition. But it's just for competition and the story is over. We do not carry it forward. We do not say, we do not care about the clothes that we used to wear in the past and keep them and reserve them somewhere in the museum. It is just for events for a period over 1 day, 2 days, and it's over. It's unfortunate that we do not celebrate our culture. We need to do that constantly. In this country, we also have Heroes Day. We celebrate our heroes, the people of the past, what they did for us, how great men and women they were, and we celebrate them. But at least there we conquer. There we have done well, because it's every year we celebrate the great men and women of this country, of the past and of the present. They've done marvelously well. In my community, recently in Nyanza, last December, that's 3 months ago, we had a celebration, a 2-day celebration, which was called Pinyu Luo. Pinyu Luo simply means Luo world, the Luo world. And we invited guests from all over. We were tracing the history of the Luo people, right from Sudan, and how they spread out in so many countries in this world. They're in Uganda, they're in Tanzania, they're in West Africa, they're everywhere. So many countries. And many people came to celebrate the Luo culture at that time. There were music, good food of long ago, and men and women who know the history of the Luo movement from Sudan to here. Even today, we were burying or we were praying for a great professor, Professor Bethuel Alan Ogot, who has written a lot about the Luo culture in many, many books and articles. In one of the presentations last December, before he passed away, he told us the power of women, how women were highly respected, and how even in the Luo movement from Sudan, the people who led the Luo movement, a number of them were women. He highlighted the role that women played in history in the Luo people. But somehow today we are losing it. Nobody cares about the role that women play historically in various movements, historical movements, in wars and anything else. Appreciation and making sure that we conserve the names, the activities, and the roles that they play. It is therefore very important that this bill must be supported, because it is a bill that is helping in preserving a culture that is dying. The Kenyan culture is rich. We are 42 communities. And that does not mean we are divided. It simply means all these communities with their cultures can make us very strong as a united nation. Kenya is a united nation. 42 communities form a nation. And so we need to celebrate the cultures that we have, the 42 cultures that we have. I know culture is dying, but we need to still fight very hard to protect it. We need to protect Gotramogi. That is a hill where our ancestors settled when they arrived in Kenya those many years. Nobody should go there in that land and start digging and treating it like its own. It must be protected, and nobody should interfere with it. We have the Kikuyu Kiondo. I remember very much in this very house, somebody brought the issue of Kikuyu Kiondo, that some other European countries are grabbing and calling it their own. It is owned by the Kikuyus because that is a traditional basket that they weave that is part and parcel of their identity. But some people, foreigners, have grabbed it and made it their own. So that is where the catch is. We are losing what we have to the European countries. We need to grab back our culture that they have taken, what they are making so much money on, that belong to us. We need it here, right here. Because if we don't watch it, they will grab everything and they will take us back to their country and make money out of us. Very soon, you will call that slavery. They will soon pick us up and take us over there if they're taking some of our property that we need to protect. I'd like to conclude, because I'm rushing somewhere else, to say that I support very, very highly this very bill, because I'm supporting our identity, I'm supporting our way of life, I'm supporting the Kenyan people who are protecting and fighting for their communities, fighting for their values, fighting for their way of life as lived by a people of today's culture. Thank you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Naomi Wako.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this debate that I like, because of the Cultural Bill 2024 that has been moved very ably by the Chief Whip, and I have been listening. And as one of the people who love their culture and just get excited about our cultures, I have been so excited this evening, and also seeing that there are many people like me. Honorable Speaker, I support this bill fully because the bill was informed by Article 11 of the Constitution of Kenya, which recognizes culture as the foundation of the nation and as the cumulative civilization of Kenyan people and the nation. It commits the government to promote all forms of national and cultural expression. In fact, what excites me is all forms of national and cultural expression through literature, arts, traditional celebrations, science, communication, information, mass media, publication, libraries, and other cultural heritage. Honorable Speaker, we are who we are because of our cultures, our behavior, our way of dressing, our way of expressing ourselves, and even the way we interact with each other and socialize is because of our culture and that strong foundation that was based on our culture. Unfortunately, today, we keep losing, and many people say culture is dynamic. Yes, it is dynamic, but we don't have to lose our good and beautiful culture. Honorable Speaker, as I was growing up, one test that any young man or woman has to go through is anytime a visitor comes to your home, number one, you have to say your name. You have to say your father's name. You have to say your grandfather's name and continue up to the last generation. And after that, you have to tell the visitor your clan and the age set of your parents and your own. And by the time you finish that, then you would have passed the exam. And by the time you have gone through that interview, everybody knows that, yes, this child has been brought up in a good way or is being brought up in a good way. Honorable Speaker, those are the things we cannot find today. When I went to Norway in 1997 to do my master's, the first thing I interacted with was, I saw so many people, the Oromo speakers there. And from our country, I had my firstborn and the secondborn with us. And we were always proudly speaking about, Kenya and very good English in everything. But within very few months, we realized that speaking our own language was the best thing that we would have done for ourselves. And within 3 months, we were able again to bring back our children, and we started speaking our language, which brought a lot of value. And anytime we interacted with other Africans, we would also speak our language, and everybody celebrated with us. And since then, speaking our language in our home is our priority. Practicing the good cultural practices is another thing that we have always done. Honorable Speaker, the more we practice our good cultural practices, the more we will grow our country and also keep our valuable heritage, whereby other people in Western world today, you don't have what you see in our country. We have 42 different ethnic groups. We have, in my own country, we have 14 different ethnic groups, each group having their own unique and special cultural practices. The more we do this, the better for us as a country, Honorable Speaker. I support this bill because since independence, it is important for us to know that since independence, Kenya has never enacted comprehensive legislative framework to support the integration of culture and cultural heritage in national development agenda. Honorable Speaker, it is many years. And the potential that is there in our cultures, the beautiful practices. Even before we were born, although Christianity was not there and maybe Islam was not there, our forefathers used to pray to God. And they used to do so many things. I remember they used to tell me that even during the drought season like now, the elders and the spiritual fathers would just go somewhere, pray, and command that it rains. And it has always rained. But today you cannot see that because we are not living in those practices. Honorable Speaker, it is too late. In fact, this bill would have been there many years ago, so that our young people can enjoy and so that we can harness the potential of our culture. Honorable Speaker, I support this bill because of the intention. The bill is also intended to facilitate the implementation of international conventions and treaties that have been ratified by Kenya. This will take us to another level. We will make our people proud of their culture, and we will also make use of those old people who are there among us now so that they can bring the beauty. They can tell us what they know. Again, Honorable Speaker, I support this because this bill, in clause 4 of the bill, it sets out the guiding principle, which include the national values and principles set out in Article 10, 27, 201, and 232 of the Constitution, and giving equal recognition, dignity, respect of all cultures, including cultures of minority or marginalized people. Honorable Speaker, this is where I belong. And for many years, we have been marginalized, we have remained minority, although we still uphold our beautiful cultures. And this bill, for the first time, has specifically mentioned us as a group, so that our cultures, even if we are the minority, even if we have been marginalized for many years, our culture should also be recognized. And in recognizing that, we will have the feeling that we are part of this country. Honorable Speaker, for many years, those of us who live in northern Kenya have been referring to this part of the country as Kenya A, and those of us in Marsabit and beyond as people living in Kenya B. But by including us in such things and also recognizing our beautiful cultures, recognizing our forefathers, recognizing the heroes, recognizing the beautiful things that we do even in that part of the country, because God has given us one special gift, that we have beautiful people in northern part of Kenya. And with our beautiful culture, then we can add a lot of value to the country and our practices. Honorable Speaker, again, I support this because this bill, clause 5 to 19 of the bill, establishes the management of culture in Kenya and delineates the function of both the national and county government. I support this fully. And mine is just to say that our county governments should see how they can promote the different cultures, the cultural practices that are there, those that are harmful, like FGM, early marriages, inheritance of women. We can put that aside, but those good cultural practices should be enhanced, should be promoted, so that even our young people can have somewhere they can go and see the value of our cultures. Honorable Speaker, we need to finish the debate on this and make sure that our president will sign so that it can be practiced. And as we do that, we should think of Cultural Week in Africa, Cultural Week in Kenya, our cultural outfit, so that even when we come to Parliament, for that 1 week, we can be practicing.
The Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this chance. Mr. Speaker, even on the onset, it's very important to discuss also the soft side of our country. The country we call Kenya, in the definition of it, Honorable Speaker, is just boundaries. And I'm saying so because many times we confuse between several things. One, what is the country, the republic, the nation, the government, and the state. Honorable Speaker, what we call a country is just by the boundaries that define where Kenya lies. The other functions, Honorable Speaker, that defines what the state is the state apparatus, Honorable Speaker, the institutions of governance, which predominantly are made on the institution that guarantee the rule of law and accountability, rule of law, of course, through the judiciary, accountability through democracy in a house like the legislature, and also a functional modern state, which then defines the executive. Honorable Speaker, many times we don't talk about what the nation is, the nation of Kenya. And Honorable Speaker, I've talked about the country called Kenya. I've talked about the state, which makes the apparatus of the institution of governance. Honorable Speaker, there is also something very fundamental called the nation. And the nation is the soft side of the country. And Honorable Speaker, many times, even economically speaking, many countries actually progress when they have been able to align their culture. And Honorable Speaker, many times we confuse the culture and the language. That is only one side of what we call the nation, or shared identity, or shared values. The soft side of the country, Honorable Speaker, encompasses and answers the question of who are we as a country, who are we as a citizenry. Honorable Speaker, one could be language, others could be shared values, others could be even our temperament, others could be our disposition as a people, because, Honorable Speaker, all these soft sides of what defines the people form what is called the culture. Honorable Speaker, in this modern era, it is beholden upon all of us. And that is why culture is always actually not static, Honorable Speaker. It is progressive and dynamic. It behoves all of us to look at the segments of our culture, which then brings identities that are static. Identities, Honorable Speaker, that then brings about fault lines in the relationships of the people. And that is why many countries, Honorable Speaker, have had many people with different cultures, but they came together to find an overarching culture, a shared value across. That is why a country like Switzerland is actually more fragmented in terms of ethnicities than Kenya. But when you look at it, it is more cohesive. A country like Tanzania, Honorable Speaker, is more fragmented in terms of ethnicities. But when you go to Arusha or Dar es Salaam, and you ask anyone which tribe you come from, the first thing they ask you is, are you Kenyan? And Honorable Speaker, what I'm just trying to say is that it is important progressively. It may not happen very suddenly. Progressively, that for a country to actually thrive economically, they have to pull in one direction. And for a people to pull in one direction, they have to be the same people. That homogeneity of the people, Honorable Speaker, comes about by coming up with a culture that overacts and a culture that is shared across all people. People could be speaking different languages. People could be different even in their appearance, Honorable Speaker, but it is important, even for a country to thrive, that we pull in one direction. And for us to pull in one direction, we first of all have to deal with the fault lines. We have to deal, Honorable Speaker, with things that divide us and find an overarching culture and shared values that bring us together as a people. And upon that, Honorable Speaker, the beauty is that we always have a chance. As a country, we have a chance. As a continent, we have a chance, Honorable Speaker, so that we can define ourselves, Honorable Speaker, through an overarching identity, and an identity that which is not static, but which is fluid. Honorable Speaker, most of the static identities are the ones that pull people apart. For example, when you are born in a different, speaking in a different language, Honorable Speaker, many times, therefore, in that particular ethnicity you come from, you may never be able to change it in your lifetime. But, Honorable Speaker, also, another static identity that we always have to live with, Honorable Speaker, many times it comes as religion. Honorable Speaker, there are also other fundamentally static identities. But the current era, the modern age of nation building, Honorable Speaker, departs from those static identities and chaperones and comes up, Honorable Speaker, with a fluid identity where people can cross over. In the identities that are static, you can't cross over. But in a fluid identity that brings people together, it becomes a big bus where anyone can get in, Honorable Speaker, and it becomes an identity where anyone can cross over, Honorable Speaker, and feel they belong. And I believe that is what we must do as the leadership of our country, as the leadership of our continent, because I believe together as a continent, we are a one people. We just have to fight that one commonality, because together, and especially as Africa, we are one people, Honorable Speaker. We must act as one people. We must pull in one direction so that our continent can actually have better days ahead. And even the same should percolate to the individual states, to the individual nations, Honorable Speaker, to the individual countries, so that we continue building a cohesive society. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. Sounds like the Hegelian philosophy or something of that type. Let's hear from Honorable Wilberforce Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to also lend a voice in support of the bill before us, the Culture Bill, which is a bill essentially to give effect to Article 11.3 of the Constitution of Kenya that calls for the protection and preservation of the culture of the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, culture espouses the entire life of the individual. Culture espouses is the glue that binds the individual to the community. And what is a community? Honorable Speaker, when you look at the bill, they attempt to define a community. And a community defines a culturally homogeneous and consciously distinct group of people who share any of the following attributes: common ancestry, similar cultural mode of livelihood or language, geographical space, ecological space, or community of interest. Honorable Speaker, Kenya is a case study of culture. Because, Honorable Speaker, you are aware, the so-called people who are in Kenya here are not the original occupiers of the space, the geographical space called Kenya. All of us migrated from somewhere and came to this country, and because of the colonial boundaries, we found ourselves in one space, one geographical space, delineated by us Kenya, reaffirmed in our Constitution 2010 as the space called Kenya. But truly speaking, Honorable Speaker, and I would want to challenge anybody who has a contrary opinion, and this bill seems to allude to something like a national culture. We can never have a national culture because we are completely different, but we can have a community of interest because we are bound together politically, we are bound together the instruments of the state, we are bound together by the monopoly of violence that's normally bestowed on the state to ensure that we remain together. It's therefore important, as we live in this country, we must appreciate the diverse culture of the people of Kenya. I say so, Honorable Speaker, I am a Samia, and the Samia people stride both Kenya and Uganda. We were simply separated by the colonial boundaries. So if you tell a Samia person to espouse the national culture of Kenya, what about the cultural integration that we have with our community, with our brothers and sisters, our cousins across the border? The same applies to the Somali community. If you tell them they must now discard the Somali culture and espouse the national culture, what happens to the Somalis in Somalia, Somalis in Djibouti, Somalians everywhere? The same applies to my neighbors, the Tesos. The same applies to Masais. Therefore, it is important in the drafting of this bill, and I want to echo the sentiments of KJ, when he says this bill is a generality. And even if you look at the drafting, Honorable Speaker, it would mean actually we will have almost 100 or so regulations, subsidiary legislation to put into effect to implement this bill. This also brings now, I can understand the difficulties the drafters faced. What is culture? What is culture? Is such a fluid statement, is an ever-changing target. The culture that was there when we started migrating here is no longer a culture that's tenable today. Some cultural practices have faded away, have to change by virtue of changing society. That's why, Honorable Speaker, as I'm not so sure to what extent amendments will be made to this bill to make sure that it fits. Again, if you look at the definition of culture, defines culture means the set of distinctive spiritual, material, intellectual, and emotional features of a community or a social group. incapable of being precisely defined. So, Honorable Speaker, it is a good attempt in the right direction to preserve the culture. But the only saving grace I see in this bill is an attempt to give it to the county government to recognize and register. But again, Honorable Speaker, in a heterogeneous society, community, for example, like Busia County, to what extent can the county government record and preserve the cultures of Tesos, the cultures of Samias, the cultures of Marach, the cultures of Bahayos, the cultures of Banyalas, the cultures of the Luos who have come to stay with us, the culture of the Subas who have come to stay with us, Honorable Speaker. And then also, Honorable Speaker, it is basically, my fear is the way it's drafted. And normally the way the other side has got very intransigent views to any views expressed from this end. If we pass the way it is incapable of being implemented, Honorable Speaker. We must appreciate, I totally agree, mwacha mila ni mtumwa. But the mila, as the player says, is specific, localized, and left there. Honorable Speaker, there are some cultures that we are not willing to cede, to expose to other people, because it's our secret. Honorable Speaker, a herbalist will not allow to surrender his skill or her skill to anybody else so they can copyright, because that's their survival. So how do you register that kind of a culture and let it go out? Honorable Speaker, a night runner, that is culture, a night runner. How do you expect a night runner to go and register his innate skill to run at night and scare boys and girls, or those who roam, or even the skill of carrying some sand or gravel and throwing on top of the roof? How do you explain that, Honorable Speaker? How do you explain that?
Undo, I thought that runners had earlier registered their own society. Proceed.
Thank you. I hope they register the society, but not the culture, not the skill. Honorable Speaker, I totally agree. So there are quite a number of very far-reaching issues, Honorable Speaker, and culture changes over time. So which culture are we registering? Honorable Speaker, let me draw to attention of the nation that in the Samia culture, women of a certain age were never allowed to eat chicken. Yes, they were never allowed to eat chicken, or eggs, or some type of fish. You see now, that's why it is so difficult to contextualize the culture. Honorable Dagal is already complaining. We had the reasons for it. Honorable Speaker, you never, in my Samia culture, Honorable Speaker, you will never meet on the same road with your mother-in-law. She either goes into the bush or you go to the bush. Now, with these open roads, with the bushes gone, how do you succeed? How do you ensure you register such a culture and preserve such a culture? We must be dynamic. And that's why, for me, where I sit, the focus should be in the historical books, probably collecting the artifacts of the people. Honorable Speaker, in our culture, a girl who was now already an adolescent could never share the same toilet with the father. Sure, never. How? But now, Honorable Speaker, we come to Nairobi, we live in 10 by 10, there's only one toilet. The culture is gone. And that's why you find some of these two small things are starting to emerge. So, Honorable Speaker, and even issues of wife inheritance, Honorable Speaker, the women's rights came and sensationalized the issue and made it look so bad. Yet it was merely protecting the lineage and the heritage of the family, because we do not want strangers to come into the family and sow some strange seeds, so that you have kids looking this way, they look like Aloro Mondi, some look like Ndindi Nyoro, We never allowed that kind of an arrangement. We needed the purity of the family. So, Honorable Speaker, at the right time, we'll attempt. We'll give the experts, the advisors, we'll attempt to make amendments. But I sincerely believe culture is dynamic. Let it remain fluid and ever-changing. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Jamatia.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I want to, from the onset, want to support this culture bill, and I want to say it is a very timely bill. It is a bill that is going to give us a lot of unity as a country. And before I even go so far, I want to quote and read a quote from one of the British Parliament legislator those days, or someone who addressed British Parliament in 2nd February 1835. His name is Lord Macaulay. He said, "I have traveled across the length and the breadth of Africa, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such a wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is our spiritual, cultural heritage, and therefore I propose that we replace our old and ancient education system, our culture, for if the African think that all that is foreign and English is good, the greater and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native culture, and they will become what we want them. A truly dominant nation it is. This is the year 1835, Mr. Speaker. This is a calculated move that was done in fragmentation of African culture. We are back to discussion today in one of the British colony, Kenya. And what is haunting us today is how we can bring back our culture. The proponents of the bill has really attempted so much, as Honorable Wundo has said, to give us how a best way possible on how we can preserve and have our culture in place. But the bill speaks so much on the hardware. If you look at African culture is based so much on the software, Mr. Speaker. It is how we passed down. We were not able to write down our cultures and histories. And that is why we found ourselves in these fragmented situations. Mr. Speaker, I want to be very particular on many things. I am a believer of cultures, specifically my culture. I am a Tugen, a Kalenjin. And in Tugen culture, if you look around and everyone speaks about their culture, African culture is so similar. If you go to the Nilotic of the Luo land, you come all the way to Kisii, come all the way to the Kalenjin nation, it is all basically African way of life. Today, we are faintly surviving because we were fragmented so much by the colonialism. From the borders, as Honorable Ndindi just put it, the sacrosanctity they gave us about the imaginary borders, that I should not be doing this because I am from the other country. It is because listening to what this, the proponents of the colonialism realize is that Africa looks like a small vault. That every time you want to save something, you put it in your vault. It is because in Europe today, you can traverse from every corner of the continent from the morning to evening without borders. But when you come to Africa, if I want to go to my nearby neighbor, Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan here, I need a visa. And it all eroded our culture because we were just one family. I want to speak about our dressings. I really want to look forward to a day when all of us in this house will be comfortably walking in and out with our culture or cultural dresses. I want to dress in my Tugen dress and showcase my beads, whether I am half naked or whatever. It is always what we were priding on so much. There are many other ways that Africa were proud in their cultures, and many of them is artificial African cultures, and it's what we call artificial intelligence today, Mr. Speaker, like the rainmaking. That is artificial intelligence. There was a way our young mothers and our old mothers, the grandmothers, would walk in and know a small girl of around 18 years is pregnant without necessarily going to test in the hospital. Because there was no way, but there was a way they would just know. There are also ways that you cannot marry from this other clan because of the historical and passing of specifically on diseases that ever happened in some clans, that you are told as a young girl, you are only guided to be married from this point of family or clan or whatever. Also, we used to have and pride on polygamy. Most of the families here are products of members here in the floor or this house are products of polygamy. Today, we are being told we shun our polygamy status or culture and embrace homosexuality. It's a wild thinking of how Africans would easily pick other people's culture and, easily shun away or throw away their cultures. Like spiritual, for instance, Mr. Speaker. If I was born in India today, I would be an Hindu. If I was born in America, probably I was a Christian. If I was born in Iraq or Syria or somewhere, I would be probably a Muslim. I am born in Africa. What is my religion? It is because Africans were not religious. They were spiritual people. They believe in a deity that not necessarily given a name. And that is why if you go to Marsabit, you will see we pray through the sun and the moon. In the Islamic, every time they go through the Ramadan season, their artificial intelligence at that time of African would show them that the moon would have to behave this way so that when they fast, they have to take that time and because they were going to stay for long without eating, and all those had its own interpretation. Mr. Speaker, African culture is actually adored. As we speak today, every colonial master, be it a British, a French, Germany, Spain, and all name it, have the artifacts of Africans in their own colonies or in their own countries. I want us, as Kenya, we need to raid on British Museum and get our artifacts and bring back to Kenya. We are bringing this culture bill because we are going back to the roots and we are taking back our cultures with pride. We want to eat our food. Nowadays, if you go to hospitals, you find young children having diabetics because of the social food that you have exposed ourselves. We eat junk food all the time. But on those days, in my culture, because of the less food we used to have, if you are eating proteins, let's say milk, you can't drink milk and eat meat at the same time. And it was also a balanced diet. You could not eat a lot of starch without having vitamins in it. And also, we used to balance with natural food like honey. If you come to Baringo today, every household believes honey is medicinal. And when we used to take care of our father's goats and cows, we used to take honey in the morning. We could take them all the time because it was nourishing. And every time we take honey, you don't get cough easily. You don't get sick anytime or many times. It used to be almost like a whole meal. Because when you take honey, Mr. Speaker, you most likely going to take a whole day. So otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I want to say categorically that this bill should be enhanced as it goes through the process. We want to ask the president, as he signs it, it should be mandated with a proper cultural day. We need to dress properly. And when the bill is being signed, we need also to give it as a sign of patriotism. during the cultural day of Moi Day, those days, we need, or Utamaduni Day, it must give us the patriotism through our culture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, and strong arguments. She just quoted Lord Macaulay, some teacher of history in government. In that debate, he was arguing with a man called William Travaropa. You may need to just go beyond that. Let's listen to Honorable Beatrice Adagala.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity also to voice my concern on this bill. I think the bill has come at